On this episode of the Star Wars Time Show, Matt and Nick return from a one-day delay to celebrate the 4th while keeping all of their appendages, something the Skywalker bros can't say. The dudes will talk about NABOO and ANDOR, the R-rated FETT movie that never was, the ties between Dawn of the Jedi and the new Rey movie, and the potential dark moments in Skeleton Crew. Of course, the show will end with the Question of the Week segment and the latest round of Top 5 featured Star Wars fan artists. Punch it, Chewie.
And run through like higher level dungeons and stuff for higher level.
I'm letting Nick kick us off this week. Hey now, everybody! La 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 la. It's 4th of July week here in the States, which is why we're a day late and always $1 short here at the Star Wars Time Show. But welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to see you. We got Jode21. We love you, Jode, and our boy Bats up in this piece. You never know who's going to make the jump with us when we shift dates around. But like I said, we had to light off some fireworks yesterday, at least myself. Took a break, but we're here today. We're going to talk all things, let's just say Lucasfilm today. How's that? Lucasfilm. You can see if you're on the live stream, we got a graphic up there that is not Star Wars related, but it kind of is, because it's Lucasfilm Day here at the SWTS. So we'll do some of that. We'll do some of this. We'll talk some of the random shit that popped up last week in Star Wars and funny things I came across after my rant that lost us at least 4 subscribers on YouTube as expected. But that's okay.
What rant?
It's just like talking like an enlightened individual, and you know how we were kind of ragging on people that are so upset about the Acolyte, and it's like a year from even releasing. So. But I did see a follow-up. I forget which trade it was, but they're like, I'm pretty sure all this weird Leslie Headland, bashing is literally from the Star Wars Theory video that we talked about a few weeks ago. And I'm guessing it is. The guy's got 3.5 million subs, and you can kind of start things there. I also saw, as we get into Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny review, Doomcock and his followers were pounding their chest over the week because apparently all his predictions about it being woke and this, that, and the other thing came true. So we'll
how?
I don't know.
I don't care.
Exactly.
Honestly,
we're not going to talk about Doomcock this week. We're going to talk about how because this is how you should do. When it comes to opinions and pop culture, typically you should go take it in yourself before you allow an internet putz like Doomcock to influence your kind of how you're going to perceive something going into it. You know what I'm saying? So no Doomcock. That's it. I will not speak the name any further on today's episode. But it is crazy, like the army of bullshit that these types of people cook up for perceived slights against the white male, I guess, Nick, and older white male characters that. Let's be real. I mean, I love me old Han Solo, old Indy, old Luke, old Leia, but there's a key word there, Nick. Old. Okay? You couldn't have the sequel trilogy. You can't have these new Indy movies where he is Harrison Ford of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Like that's why they make these movies, to try to do some sort of a, put the character to bed nicely, or to set up a potential passing of the torch, if you will. Apparently Indy was woke because it had a female in a lead role. That's where we're at. And here's the new one, my friends. Apparently there's a theory going around there that Kathleen Kennedy has only casted women that look like her to be in lead roles to ruin the pop culture creations of men. I'm
That
not
why all of the
right.
the
That's why
women in lead roles are British
That-
and she's not.
That's why she
Like,
she hired Daisy Ridley, because Daisy has brown hair like Kathy does. That's why she hired Phoebe, because she has brown hair like Kathy does. So this is the weird shit that Lucasfilm supposed fans get into. But who gives a shit about these people? Let's get into this. 1-6 shooter knows what I'm talking about. Any strong woman is definitely woke, but who gives a fuck about those types? Let's talk Indiana Jones, and I'm excited because Nick actually saw it. I saw it. This is the first time we've actually seen a new movie, and we could talk about it on the show here. So we are going to kind of kick things off with the DOD. And since I've been yapping, I might as well keep going. That's this kind of thing here. Poor Nick. He's very patient and waits his turn. It's all right. I know Nick fans kind of like it when it's just Nick sometimes, and I don't. I kind of agree with some of you people. But here we go. So Indiana Jones 5, aka Dial of Destiny. My quick take, my like poster type of review or like a pull quote is it was great. I mean, it is as Indiana Jones as any other Indiana Jones that came before it. To me, Nick, it felt. I still think The Last Crusade is the best for me, but it felt close to that. We kind of got this gallivanting around the globe type of adventure, going after like an old ancient artifact that may or may not have otherworldly powers. And I dug it. Like I really dug the structure of the film. I complaint wise, it's way too long at 2:34, and you can feel that as towards the end. It feels like they hit fast forward on a few of the threads they were cooking, specifically with Helena's character. Like she has a very quick turn. It doesn't quite. It's kind of like Anakin's turn in Revenge of the Sith. Like things are just going along, and then hey, fuck yeah, I'm gonna completely change the type of person I am, character I am, and blah blah blah. I do have a heart after all. And the at times, now while it was good, and I'm interested to hear what Nick says, at times in the great opening sequence, which is the de-aged Ford. It looks a little weird. It's like, yeah, I don't know if like that day, like they just didn't have the right lighting guy in, or they didn't have the right texture guy in. But there are a few shots of de-aged Ford, specifically on the train heist deal, where it's like, hey, okay, yeah, that's we're still not there, The uncanny valley comes in a little bit, but. By God, it was probably the best de-aging of an ultra-famous actor we've seen in quite some time. So overall, I think Indy 5 is a win. I know it kind of failed box office expectations, which is sad. I understand a little bit. I mean, there was definitely a large anti-Indy 5 campaign, and people do buy into that stuff, I guess. I guess there's still people that are afraid to go to movies. But Nick, I think it only made 60 mil, which, sounds great on paper. But for a summer blockbuster with the Indiana Jones pedigree, I definitely think Lucasfilm was probably a little bit disappointed. But in the end, people, all the bullshit you're hearing about this movie, the critical reaction, this is one that I think the fans get right on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, it's a very skewed split between critics and fans. Fans are much more favorable than the critics, and this is one I am going to have to lean with the fans, Nick. I don't know. I think this movie's a winner. If you want me to put a number on it, I would say 8.5 to a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. Like Indiana Jones, like flips between my favorite and my second favorite, like franchise series of all time. Like it's pretty much between that and Star Wars. And I think that I love the movie. I didn't really have a problem with the pacing of it because I think for a 2.5 hour 2.5 hour long movie, it didn't feel that long. Like it was paced pretty well. My biggest complaint was that in like towards the beginning of the movie, it felt like the two chase scenes that happened were like kind of close together. So I wish that they would have been spaced out a little bit more. So you weren't like jumping from, chase scene to chase scene. overall, I enjoyed it. I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. I was gonna like this movie, like pretty much regardless. I liked the Crystal Skull movie. Like I don't care if it's like wonky stuff. Like, you know,
dude, every indie film has like an element of wonky, supernatural, hocus pocus. So, I mean, while Crystal Skull did kind of bring in like alien civilization, is it that far off from a Dial of Destiny or the Chalice or the Ark or the Stones? I mean, this franchise has always been pretty fantastical.
Yeah, and I think that I think that initially my thought was Indiana Jones does the best when it's like religious relics and artifacts. And you kind of got that. I mean, like obviously the title pretty much told you what it was going to be, but you kind of got a religious artifact tease in the very beginning with the Lance of Longinus and stuff like that. But I think that this movie did a fantastic job of like stepping away from the religious artifacts. But still having the same effect as like the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant. So yeah, I was a big fan. As for the de-aged Ford, I mean, I think my biggest thing is like this movie has been in fucking production for years,
long time. Yeah, because he got hurt.
Yeah, he got injured. There was COVID and everything else. Like this movie's been in production for like 5 years.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
So it really like depends. Like for me, the de-aging thing is interesting because it depends on when in the cycle they did the de-aging for certain scenes. Like the first time you see it, definitely looks like a little bit weird. It settled in and looked good for a while, and then like you mentioned, it kind of looks a little bit weird again. But overall, I think that it was a really good use of the de-aging technology. I don't think that it took away from the scenes or if it took away from the performance or anything like that. I thought that Phoebe Waller-Bridge did a great job playing off of Harrison Ford, and they had a really cool rapport together. I like how they very briefly addressed the Shia LaBeouf, Mutt Williams situation that was left open after the fourth movie, after Crystal Skull. So I think that Nick, they did a good job of just like touching on it.
Since you brought that up, badass. I mean, what did you think how they handled Mutt? I mean, were you good with that?
Yeah, I was totally fine with it.
Yeah.
I don't want to like give any spoilers, but it was they didn't need to spend time on it, and They shouldn't have spent too much time on it, but they told you what happened. They showed you how it affected Indy and Marion. And I think that that's all they really needed. Like, I think that that's pretty much all they had to do.
Back to Helena. And I agree with you. I was quite impressed with Phoebe's performance. But I do, and I'm not picking on Connor here, press pause, but he's right. He's written some really well thought out mini reviews on Instagram. He's in film, so I kind of take his opinion a little bit more than some others. And I kind of felt this way too, but did you, regardless of Phoebe's performance, which was great, did you find the character of Helena herself to be slightly off-putting? Like almost, I don't want to call her a bitch or a cunt because she's a woman, but she was almost had like no feelings, no heart. She was very, lackadaisical in terms of her relationship with Indy. It was all about money. And then, all of a sudden she, kind of switches and she's like, no, we got to save you. I mean, in general, did you like the character of Helena?
Yeah,
okay.
I did.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's a problem that she was callous at the beginning. I think that was the whole point of the character, is for her to be callous, and then for Indy to try to say like, hey, there's like, she's a young person that's gotten into this business because of who's gotten into the business of selling relics because she saw the damage that relics did to her father. So she's not going to look at them in a kind way. Like, she literally saw her father devolve, deteriorate, and then die because of his obsession with ancient history. And it's similar to the way that the relationship was between Indy and his father. like Indy and his father had almost no relationship for decades.
Yeah, there's a great line in there, Nick. Did you catch it? Where essentially like, why are you going after something that drove your father mad? And he's essentially talking about his dad and the Grail and
exactly
kind of how their relationship fizzled because of that.
Yeah, so they're drawing parallels between the character of Indy when he was younger from The Last Crusade and the character like Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character. So and now you have Indy that can look at that situation through a lens of experience and say like, look, I know that this is something that you're struggling with. I know that you have animosity towards your father and these things that, you know, like, and the things that he was obsessed with his entire life that took away the attention and the love that you deserved. But I think like that is why she is the way she is. And while her character turn did happen relatively quickly because it was a 2.5 hour long movie.
Right. They're like,
and
they put we need to make her like Indy a little bit more now.
And I think that there was a moment that happened, you know, like when she realized like, oh, the stakes of this are pretty high when they were, you know, again, like I'm not trying to, I don't want to give away too many spoilers.
Let's just say her, like the tone of her character kind of changes on a dime right towards the end of the movie when kind of the big hurrah happens.
Yeah. So I wasn't off put by her like being bitchy or all about the money or stuff like that because like there are characters like that all the time, and I think that
you make a good point. You make a good point, and I'm with you that I do think Helena is a parallel to Indy. The difference is they both had dads that were goofy over relics. Indy chose to become a relic hunter for the preservation of history. She chose to become one to get rich. That was the difference. Therefore, she's like, I'm in it just for money, and we know, you know, Indy's famous line, "It belongs in a museum." That was his take on it. So yeah, that's a good way to kind of splice those two characters. They had very similar.
Like it would have been boring as fuck if it was like, "Hi, I'm Helena.
Let's go hunt for treasures and take them to museums." Yeah.
And like we think of things the exact same way. I think like even though we haven't talked in decades, like I believe everything that you believe. I think that we should do the things the exact same way that you've been doing them. That would have like a really terrible character
and
dynamic.
you never get that when you have two people from different generations. They're always going to have a different type of take on the world because one has lived many more years and is probably a little more learned, and the other thinks that they're unstoppable. I mean that's in any facet of life.
Yeah, so I think that like overall, I would probably put it as my third favorite indie movie because I really enjoy.
Okay, rank them out then. Where are we at?
I mean, it's Last Crusade, Raiders, Dial, and then like Crystal Skull and Temple of Doom can probably flip around. I actually, I'm just gonna take that back. Like I like Crystal Skull more than I like Temple of Doom. I don't care that it's newer. Or
I'm
the
with you too, man.
Like and shit like that.
Temple of Doom, if you go back and watch it, it's the weakest in my opinion. It lacks the exciting MacGuffin, I guess. Like the thing he's going after for, it's like, okay, the fucking stones for the village, and it's like, all right.
Like, I think that like one thing that makes Indiana Jones really interesting too is like the traveling, like all of the different locations that they go to in the movies.
And Dial did this great. Like that's what to me it really had that Last Crusade where there's the map and the plane. Hey, look, now it's a big Pan Am plane instead of a prop plane because they're in the late 60s or 70s. So yeah, Temple of Doom is definitely wonky. I've always had issues with that one. It fucked me up as a little kid. Probably watched it too young, like the heart stuff. And the monkey brains always kind of warped me a little bit. Yeah. And that one, honestly, that should be the first movie. Like in the indie timeline, that comes before Raiders. Like that's like the first Indiana Jones adventure, technically, outside of the Young Indy Chronicles. But Temple of Doom, timeline-wise, is set before Raiders.
Yeah, so, I mean... Yeah, so that one just lacks a lot of like the hallmark stuff from the Indiana Jones franchise. So it'll probably be last for me. But yeah, I mean, like I like the way that I told my friends, I was like, if you're a fan of Indiana Jones, you're gonna like this movie. Like that's just how it is. And if you're gonna go in and you're just like your intention is to like pick it apart, then you're gonna sit there and you're gonna find things that you don't like about it, and you're gonna pick it apart. But I mean, I watch it again. I truly enjoyed it. It was definitely like towards the end of it when the movie was coming to its close. I was like, it was sad because I was like, man, there's like, this is it. There's going to be no more. Like, I'm not the type of person that's like, like that, like gets emotional over like series ending or something like that. But this one kind of like caught me a little bit because I've been a fan of Indiana Jones since I was like a small child. And
this came first for you, even over Star Wars, right? Like you were into this before Star Wars, or no?
Yeah. Very much so. So yeah, I mean, it was odd to see the end of it and be like, this is the end, and like this is truly.
You never know, man. I mean, he said he's not retiring, so I think the way it ends, it should be the end. It should.
Yeah. Well, I think that like logistically too, it's just there's no way that you can have another Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford being the lead because Harrison Ford is 81 years old.
And they've obviously, I mean, let's be real. I mean, I think they didn't shove it in our faces, which I kind of dig. And it's not because I hate women. I don't like when they try to force like, all right, let's keep the franchise going. And here you go, fans. But I mean, clearly Helena could carry the title forward. I mean, she has her own short round and everything. I mean, those choices were very particular they made with that character, and I forget what her short round, his name, but I hope it's the end. I could see them starting like an Indiana Jones Adventures something though.
Yeah, if they like, I think that they're probably going to start straying away from making TV series based off of franchises just because they haven't been doing well outside of the Star Wars ones.
Right.
Like they tried to do it with National Treasure. It got canceled after one season. They tried to do it with the Mighty Ducks, and that got canceled after 2 seasons. So I don't like, and I know that they've already done the experiment with the Young Indiana Jones series. I would be interested to see if they maybe like try to go back to that like try to revisit that series.
Hey, but with the $60 million opening weekend, there's a good chance it killed itself anyway. So you probably don't have to worry about that.
I mean, but here's the thing. That's just movies now. Like that's just how it's going to be. Like like Hollywood needs to readjust its expectations for what an opening night looks like, because people just don't care to go to the theater anymore. Like
there's been, I know Top Gun cleaned house. Have we had any movies this summer just fucking own or May, like May, no. June? No.
Everything fucking bombed. Like everything was bad. I mean, the Flash was awful.
Dude, the Flash, I think the Flash still hasn't caught up to Black Adam, and they're like, rock it out of here. We don't need you.
Yeah,
like the 2 DC movies they released since Gunn and whatever took over have been like the lowest grossing films, Shazam 2 and The Flash.
Yeah. So like, I mean, both of those bombed. I mean, Indy did 60 million. I don't even really know what else, like that Elemental movie didn't do well either.
Yep. Bombed.
So like I think that like people just need to realize, or like Hollywood industry execs need to realize that like, you can't make movies for $250 million anymore.
You know what?
Get it lower.
How do you like? I had no clue that Antonio Banderas was just going to randomly show up in this movie. I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure that guy's Antonio. And sure enough, once he started talking, I was like, yeah, that's definitely Antonio. I do like. So I mean, they had some famous faces in here, but it didn't feel like cameo time. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah, no, they did a good job of like sprinkling in people that are like of a higher profile, like Antonio Banderas.
And what's his name? Mads. I mean, Mads is fucking
Mads Mikkelsen,
man.
Great.
Like, he is the man.
Yeah, great villain.
The man. Although, not that I don't think this is a spoiler, but how the fuck do you survive that water tower clock at the beginning? You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, like when I saw him back, I was like, oh wow, he lived.
I was at least expecting like a Bond villain thing where like half his face was like rusted metal or something, but no, this a little bump on the head, little egg on the noggin. No big deal.
Seems to be fine. Yeah.
Hey, the other thing, and this is just to show you how fucked up the world is now, because I think Harrison, a few weeks before it came out, was like, yeah, I think it's great watching Nazis get punched, but there's a faction of humans now that think that's woke. If you think beating up Nazis or seeing Nazis get fucked up is not okay. But I always love when we get an indie movie and the main antagonists are the Nazis, which is probably why Temple of Doom is my least favorite, because that's the only movie where it's not Nazi-riddled fucks that he is fighting with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, well, Crystal Skull was it? Yeah, that was Russians.
Was it? I thought Nazi. They were German, or what's her name was German. Kate Blanchett.
No, they were Russian. But I mean, I think that works well too. Yeah, I mean, like Indy definitely does best when Nazis are your primary villain, because it's like easy, timeless, nobody can argue with it, and the people that do argue with it don't matter anyway. So
Nick,
who cares?
Do you think the opening scene that has to take place after The Last Crusade, right? Because that's happening towards the end of World War II, where The Last Crusade is like leading into World War II, right?
Yeah, I think it's like late 1930. Well, yeah, like late 1939, maybe like up to 1941, I think. And the end of this movie, or the beginning of this movie, took place in 1944, like late 1944, as the German army was starting to fade, and Hitler had already
they were
into hiding.
they were looting all the shit, and that's kind of how the opening scene started. I think the opening was fantastic, by the way. Like that.
Oh yeah, it was super fun.
That's one of obviously Raiders is the iconic kind of cold indie open, but I would put the Dial of Destiny up there for sure. I mean, Last Crusade, if you think about now, that the flashback fake reveal, where that's great too. But I think the opening in Dial of Destiny was well done.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So I would recommend going to see it. Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, if you listen to critic reviews at this point in your life, I don't know what you're doing, like, especially for a movie that's going to cost you $8 to go see. If you want to see it, just go see it. I haven't looked at a review for anything that I've seen in fucking years.
No, I never. Like, I know as we are reviewing something, again, I mean, we're just two idiots.
Yeah, but also, like, we've basically stopped giving like numbered reviews to stuff. Like, we used to, like, here's a numbered review on a game, but like we don't really do it anymore. And it's mostly because, like, one, if you're going to put out a numbered review of a game, it's so hard to do it if you don't have an early access copy, and two, it's just like, just go fucking play it. Like, I don't want to give people my opinions to sway them from forming their own opinions.
No, I don't. I used to go out of my way to, when I had my other channel, to do like quick reviews, 2 minutes or less. I've stopped all that. If someone asks me, I'll go ahead and lay it down for them. But you gotta get back to forming your own opinion. Okay, take something in, and then you decide if it's good or not. Don't let a Doomcock or someone like that tell you, no, this is how you should think. This is what you should think about it. Don't even worry about seeing it. Just keep saying what I've told you about it, even though you haven't seen it. It's ridiculous. I like this. Yeah. I caught this too, Trevor. $8. What IMAX theater are you going to, Nick? I'm like, shit, I need to go to movies in Texas, because even like a matinee up here is like $14, man. I mean, it's like, shit. Nick's still old school, no reserved seats, no recliners. Like, he's going, you know, you got to sit with the public. There might be a homeless guy in there. That's how you get the $8 tickets.
Hey, I'm sitting in a place for 2.5 hours. I don't need reclining seats. I don't need all that bullshit. I'm in and I'm out.
Nah, see, I'm a freak, man. If I can get, to me, I think AMC's Dolby Atmos theaters are the best, better than IMAX, better than anything, because you got the best projector, the best sound. And to me, if you got video and sound on equal levels of quality, it doesn't get any better than that. Like IMAX is fun. You got the big screen, but half the time they didn't film on IMAX, so you're not even getting the full screen. Plus the sound is in Atmos. That spatial sound is godlike. I mean, I love it so much. I have surround sound out on my deck now. Like I leave it outside. That's how important sound is to me. All right. That's just another one of my problems. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they sell booze at Nick's too, but like you said, he's in and out. He don't fuck around.
I don't eat. I don't drink when I'm at the movies.
No,
like
that's how it
I
should
sit down,
be.
I watch the movie, and I leave the theater.
I'm with you.
Like, that's what I do.
Good for you. That you go to movies correctly. People that go to movies and get dinners and a bunch of drinks and Slurpees and candy and chips. That's wrong. That's not the right way to watch a movie in public. It absolutely is the wrong way to do it. Especially if you picked your seat next to a stranger and then you're just sitting there for 2.5 hours like, because I hear it all. I got that mental problem where I can't hear anyone chew, including myself. Do you have any of these sicknesses, Nick? No, I doubt it.
No, I mean, Alamo Drafthouse is a pretty popular theater chain in Texas, and people always eat in there. Like, I'm just generally like. Also, the theater that I go to is almost always like not full, so I don't have to worry too much about
it. Right there, like I would probably like go to some low quality theaters if I knew it meant less humans. I'm all about
like that.
Less humans. Like, anything with less humans is good for me.
I just go to like there's a regular Regal theater right near my house. Walk in it. There's almost nobody in line. Scan my.
Dude, you do like
pass.
old school. Nick's like back in the 80s, 90s. He's buying his ticket. He's calling the theater to get times, or he's looking in the paper. I love it. Nick's like, fuck it. Fuck this technology shit. Before you know it, you're gonna see his phone fly across the room out the window.
Easy.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
It's definitely a movie theater movie. I mean, if you're gonna do any this summer, if it is expensive to go, you got a large clan. This would be a good one. I'm behind that. I'm looking forward to obviously Mission Impossible coming up. Be taking a little one to Barbie. That'll be interesting. What else we got coming out the rest of the summer? I know there's at least one or two more big ones. But good stuff here. I really, I was a little concerned. You never know when they are bringing out these old heroes of our past, what it could look and feel like. But I actually think they used Harrison perfectly and complemented him with Phoebe and the supporting cast. And it makes sense. You're just like, yeah, this works. This doesn't seem too far-fetched outside of, obviously, it's a movie. Okay, like I get it, the stunts and shit they do, it's like Fast and Furious, but hey, it's the motherfucking movies. Have a little fun. All right, so Spencer's saying Raiders is 38 and the beginning of Dial is 43. Sure, works.
I think the beginning of Dial is later than 43 because they said in the movie that it was late 1944.
Yeah, I mean, the Allies were pushing into deep Europe. I mean, at least what I watched, Nick, Hitler. They already knew he was nuts, right? I mean,
well, they said that Hitler was already in hiding.
Yeah, so he's in the eagle's nest, so they're losing.
Yeah, so that was 44. That was mid to late 1944 because the war officially ended in 1945.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't fighting a battle. They were literally looting that cathedral to load up the shit to take back to Germany for the boss. So
yeah, so I think that I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that
now Raiders is set at 36. I love you guys. Keep coming. We're all over the place.
Nobody.
All right, here we go. Connor's coming in with the official. Raiders is 36. Dials is 44. Crusade is 38. So in the end, I was right. Thank you. Okay. That's all that matters, right, people? As long as Matt's right, everything's good. Okay. Good stuff there. Check it out. We love Harrison. I saw a clip. He must have been in a fan screening, and as he was walking out, they started dun da da dun dun da da, and you'd think he'd be like, "Shut up!" He actually like started conducting them. It's like he is such a different person with Indiana Jones than he is with Star Wars. It's like he loves Indiana Jones, loves the fandom, loves the franchise. Star Wars fucking despises it, wishes it never happened, and would probably stab George Lucas today if he could.
Honestly, if you think about the filmmaking process for those two movies, Indiana Jones was probably way more fun to film.
Well, it's better dialogue. Like, if you ever listen to Harrison talk about making Star Wars, you can tell he fucking hated every aspect of it. The script, being directed by George in the first movie, it just seemed like a nightmare. I mean, he famously wanted his character killed after the first movie. Like, he's like, I'm done. But it is like, just research Harrison Ford responding to Star Wars questions. You're gonna be like, this guy fucking hates Star Wars more than a doomcock. I mean, he fucking hates it. It's funny, but this, he'll play with the fans. So I guess you're better off if you're dressed in your fedora when you run into Harrison if you're wearing your black vest. Okay, just watch out. All right, real quick, and I doubt Nick's gotten into these. I've only watched the first episode. We're talking about Secret Invasion. And Nick, I'll leave it at this. This is good Marvel. I know there's 2 episodes I haven't seen yet, but the pilot definitely got me interested. I love most things Sam Jackson. I love most things like spy, deep state type of shit, especially when aliens are involved and plots with Russia and America and yada, yada, yada. So I dig it. It doesn't feel like the Marvel campy shit. Like, this feels like a legit spy mystery drama thing. So if you've been sleeping on Secret Invasion because of some of the Phase 4 and 5 stuff, this might be a good one to kind of come back and play with the MCU again on TV.
Yeah, I want to watch it. I don't know. I mean, like, I know that I don't have to watch all the shit that comes before it because you don't. I haven't watched basically anything. And like, the only movie from Phase 4 that I actually watched was the Doctor Strange one, I think. And then like, I just haven't watched anything Marvel related in a while. So like, I'm like super just behind on all of the stuff. But I'm also like not in a position where I'm like, I'm going to go back and watch everything and then watch Secret Wars. You don't. I mean,
Nick, I don't know where this fits in the time, like in the Marvel timeline. I think it's year 2025 now in the Marvel universe. But in terms of, Fury being the main character, it more or less picks up after Far From Home when you realize he's up on Saber. Like that, so you don't need to watch any of the other 4 and 5 stuff to get right into this.
Which one is Far From Home? I can't.
With Mysterio.
Okay, yeah, we saw.
And you know how like it was revealed the whole time that Fury and Maria were actually Talos and Soren, because Fury was up on the space station. So this kind of picks up after that, sort of like a year or 2 after that stinger, where you realize like, shit, Fury's up in space. He wasn't dealing with Peter this time. That was Talos. So yeah, it's good. I don't know. It feels a little more gritty, maybe a little more Phase 1 through 3, but less camp. I mean, it's fairly dark, but I'm not, it's not like R-rated or anything crazy like that.
Yeah, I think like the only other, like the thing that Taylor and I just watched the first episode of yesterday was Strange New Worlds on Paramount Plus.
Damn it, that's right. That started. How it was that like 3 episods in at this point, 3 or 4?
Oh geez, no, I'm talking about episode 1.
Oh, okay,
like
yeah. You'll like I've said before, if you're new here, but any of the Star Trek content on Paramount Plus is choice. It's fantastic. Discovery's great. Strange New Worlds is great, and the Picard, which is now wrapped after 3 seasons, is great. If you've even been slightly entertained by Star Trek in the past, these will all scratch that itch. I mean, to me, they are. Yeah. It's the best quality Star Trek out there. I mean, and Nick, I know Strange New Worlds, I don't think it gets as hardcore as Discovery did, but it's like an adult Star Trek. I mean, there's like fucking people getting blasted and arms falling off and shit. I mean, it's legit.
Strange New World. So like we watched the first episode, or we watched the first episode of Discovery a while back, and Taylor just couldn't get into it. Like it was just, it didn't grab her. So we put that one down, and then it was a while before. I mean, like this was before we moved into this house when we tried to watch Discovery, and it was just yesterday that we watched Strange New World, and the response from her was night and day. Like Strange New World just like hit on a different level. I think it was a little like the opening of Discovery was like very focused on like Klingon, like the Klingon relationship between, you know, like between them and the and Starfleet and stuff like that. There's the battle right off the bat and everything that happened. I feel like Strange New World like kind of grounded you like in the current landscape of Starfleet and stuff like that pretty early. And like the first mission was like very fun, where they're like going to a first contact. Well, they're going to like a distress call with a planet that's not ready for first contact yet they have to make first contact. So it was good. It was a fun first episode.
And the best part, Nick, is I don't know how deep you've gotten into it, but it's all based on the first Star Trek pilot ever, where it was not Captain Kirk. It was the guy.
Pike. Yeah.
And then they just replaced him with Shatner, and they're like, "Oh yeah, here's Star Trek again." but this is kind of crafting that Pike's backstory. And the only reason I'm going to say you kind of have to go back to Discovery is Discovery launches Strange New Worlds. Like,
yeah, I know that because they reference it right up front. Like they're like, well, the only reason that this planet has been able to find or create warp technology at this level, at this stage in their development, is because they witnessed the Discovery battle or something like that. And I was like, well,
Spock. Let's just say
clearly something.
Spock's got a pretty major thread in that season of Discovery between his sister. I forget her name.
I know that there's some of that. We'll see. Like, what'll probably end up happening is like we'll watch Strange New World up until current, and then like see if I can like go back.
It's worth it. Even if you can't convince Taylor, I promise you, Discovery is worth sticking with. It's brings up some interesting stuff, some far future time travel, and how they kind of reset the Star Trek timeline to make certain things work. It's good. It's good. All right. There you go. You guys are getting all sorts of non-Star Wars shit on today's episode of the Star Wars Time Show, where there's always time, maybe, for Star Wars time. But hey, we're here. We're going to talk a little Star Wars at this point in episode 268. So, Nick, based on some set pick leaks from a, what is this, Hever Castle? Hever for our boys and girls in the UK. Is it pronounced Hever or Hever? Who cares? It's a castle over in Kent, England. All right. So if you're on the live stream, which you can join in, typically Tuesdays 5 p. East on YouTube at Star Wars Time Show. But we got some graphics up, Nick, that showed up on Reddit, and this Redditor out there kind of saw this shoot taking place, put two and two together, and realized, hey, this is the same spot that they filmed some scenes in The Phantom Menace for NABOO. Sadly, they were cut. If anyone has ever seen the deleted Phantom Menace scenes, it's the scene where they show up in NABOO in the bongo. Yes, the bongo. And then that's George. That day, he was just naming shit. He's like, yeah, call that alien Bingo, call that one Bango, and call the ship Bongo. And he just had days like that. But anyways, Nick, they're getting off the bongo to enter the city. The two Jedi, clearly, they can handle themselves. They swim through the river, and they get away. Jar Jar, on the other hand, is struggling, and he falls into the river and then goes over a waterfall. So there's a deleted scene. So the question is, if they're using this location to shoot Andor Season 2, one has to think that the show is going to make its way to NABOO. So, Nick, do you think NABOO shows up, and why, if it does? Or do you think this is... they're just using it, and through digital wizardry and other props, it's just going to become a whole new location that we've never been to before?
I think that NABOO could show up. I think that it is one of the planets that was kind of like just shunted to the side after the prequel series. I don't think that they had much. I don't know if like there was just not much reason to go back to NABOO, or if they like had specific storylines for NABOO on certain things and then decided to not follow up on them. I will say that like NABOO as a planet in itself, because we don't have that much information about it, we don't know really how interconnected they are with the rest of the galaxy, or like how they function.
Well, they were
like
still in the Senate for the most part, you would think.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're still in the Senate, and like they're still a part of, you know, the Republic, and then after that they were a part of the Empire before the dissolution of the Imperial Senate and stuff like that. But it's like, it seems like a planet that doesn't have a lot going on there, for lack of a better term, other than the initial kind of spark that kicked off the entire downfall of the Republic.
I position NABOO, and I actually have this as a special topic one day. I don't want to get into the weeds today, but I look at NABOO as like an Alderaan, where they're like a freedom, rights loving planet in the galaxy. And there was very few of those planets in the galaxy that were truly all about doing the right thing. Look from what Padme tried to do with her power as queen to senator. I mean, hell, it was the Nabooians that helped Grogu escape, for Christ's sake, during Order 66. If you get into the comics, you literally had the Amidalans form, and they were a rebel cell. So they were already getting into rebel activity as soon as the Republic fell. So I have always looked at NABOO as a planet that is always up for fighting for what is right. And if you kind of juxtapose that with what's happening in Andor, specifically Andor Season 2, we're going around the galaxy trying to build this rebel alliance. Cassian, Luthen, Vel, whoever, making a trip to NABOO just lines up because, yeah, why not? I mean, NABOO would definitely be a planet, a beacon, if you will, for freedom fighters. So I could most definitely see getting right into Theed and seeing, you know, do they still have their monarchy? Is there a queen? Is there a king now? How is NABOO being run? Who is running the resistance? Is it Cassian meeting with them? Or is NABOO big enough that it's a Luthen contact? You know what I mean? So I do think it is going to be NABOO and Theed in particular, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I do hope they go back there, because I do want to see just like how, like almost like a check-in on the planet. It also, like, I don't know, like if this is just the vibes that I get from what we saw in the content that we have from NABOO, but like it also gives me the sense that like they're more of an affluent society. Like it seems like there's a lot of money to be had on NABOO. So,
and poor reptilian-like things that live under the water.
Yeah, I mean,
but they are friends. They did become friends after the battle in NABOO, so we can at least, as Jay Patrick said here, you know, they weren't on the best of terms with Gungans, but they did come together, and you know, Jar Jar was put into the Senate, so they got past some of that. I think at the end of episode 1, there was like definitely a coming together of the species. Jay Patrick, you are right. That is one caveat in my NABOO is kind of a planet of peace. Yes, Sheev Palpatine is from there, and he essentially was the darkest thing that ever happened to the galaxy. Yeah. So that negates my theory a little bit, but that's why it's a special topic for another day, so we can dive deeper into. But
so I think that like maybe it could be like the first mission that Cassian ever goes on in Andor is like, hey, we need to get fucking money. That's basically what it was. Get money to help us fund this rebellion, because rebellions don't grow on trees, and neither does money. Like, you need to fund it. So maybe this is like another opportunity to try to secure more funds for their rebellion efforts or something like that. I could see that being a thing. I could also see it, them meeting up with potentially like Captain Tanaka. I mean, we haven't seen Tanaka in a while. We knew that he was friendly.
That's a good point, because timeline wise, the handmaidens would be very active at running the Amidalans on the planet. So Sabe, Rabe, all of them have potential to show up. I mean, Keira Knightley, bring her back, right? She played a handmaiden. I think she played Sabe, in fact. And Sabe played such a major role in the Darth Vader comic timeline, again, in between Empire and Return of the Jedi, that it would be cool to kind of see her in live action again, fighting for freedom before all the dark shit happens with her and Vader in the comics.
Yeah, so I think that like there's a lot to go over on Naboo. There's like a lot of time to cover in terms of like where they're sitting in their rebellious stance, where they're like, you know, what kind of support are they giving to the rebellion? Are they trying to stay quiet at this time? Because we know that in Andor, it's like a burgeoning time of rebellion. It isn't quite like it was when we were in Episode 4 timeline, or even like Rogue One timeline, where the rebellion itself was a little bit more of a cohesive unit, especially in Rogue One towards the end. Like, where, like, are they going there? Is Luthen going there to try to convince them to like, hey, give some resources to the rebellion? Think about sending people over to help with the rebellion.
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, to me, Nick, the main focus of Andor season 2 is going to go beyond like, we need our resources. I think it's going to shift to, okay, these cells are developing. We're out in the open now. Now, how do we bring this all together? Like, how do we wrangle the Sauls of the world and have them work together with Mon Mothma and ultimately muster up on Yavin 4 there at the Massassi Temple?
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what happens there, because it is like, it's one of those locations. If you think about all of the other like prequel locations, like we've been back to Mustafar, we've been back to Coruscant, we've been back to Tatooine, obviously a
few
million
times.
Like, you know,
you are right. Yeah, we've stayed
is,
away from Naboo. I mean, I could see it making an appearance in The Mandalorian again, hopefully paying off more on Grogu's flashback, considering he left on a a J-type Nubian cruiser. We should get Nick to do his Toydarian voice, I guess.
I did not do so. Like the teaser for the upcoming episode of Scoundrels of the New Republic, we do have a little bit more time with our Toydarian friend Crepo on there. So I'm not sure. Did we put that out yet already?
No, I was sitting on it to see what we were going to do this week, but since our happy asses are yapping live, I am going to hold it. Do you think I mean, there's a potential, I know there's going to be a date in early August where I'm going to be out. We could hold it for that, unless you just want to roll them out. I mean, I don't know. I had fun. I mean, I've had fun in the 3 we've done, but this one, I do feel like we're hitting some sort of a special cadence for our group, if you will.
Finding a rhythm. And then also I think that you guys as players are really figuring out like who your characters are, how, like what your character's dynamic is within the group. Because I think that like when you start out a brand new campaign, especially one like this, where like you guys have created your own custom characters, you guys have created your own backstory. This is a completely like custom story that we're telling too. Like it takes time for you guys as players to figure out like, okay, well, how does my character interact with the other characters around me? And then figuring out like group dynamic and stuff like that. So
my character is hard to interact with any other character, but that like I said, I always, when I got into this, I was like, I'm going Ewok Berserker and I'm going Method, and there's going to be no compromise. And I think I compromised a little bit, Nick. I actually let Zavu like try to do some peaceful stuff this time. But I did did get my kill. I always got to get a kill. That's like my episode goal. Every goal, I'm fighting something, whether the team wants to or not. And I typically do copious amounts of spice, my character.
That is
literally like
true.
this kind of a theme in this episode, the mission, where Matlu, again, his spice problem kind of bubbles up and causes issues for the team. So there's your tease.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Chapter 2, The Mission.
Yeah. The Mission. I mean, it went well. It was super fun. It was a shorter episode than the last 2. And I don't want to perhaps tease it yet, but we do have another person that is interested in becoming a player in the game. So if we can figure out something around them, you may see a new face on the episode after.
J. Patrick nailed it. Cocaine Ewok. I mean, that's pretty much it. I think someone posted it's like the Cocaine Bear poster in our Discord, but it's with Wicket. And it's like, it is. Yeah, it's something like Cocaine Ewok, but it is. That's me. That's how I play my role. I don't have a lot of compromise in my Ewok. But when shit hits the fan, I take care of business. Okay, we'll just leave it at that.
So stay tuned for the drop of episode 2. We'll let you guys know when it's going to hit our YouTube channel.
I weave in of either just saying yub nub or speaking caveman or just talking like I do. So I haven't perfected my character voice yet. But we all do. Like Trevor tries an Aussie accent on Zabu, and sometimes he slides into it, sometimes he doesn't. So it's fun.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a good time.
Accents are hard to do, and especially like for you guys, accents a little easier because that's the only accent that you're talking in. For me, as everybody, other than you guys, it's hard.
Nick's got to try. I mean, at one point, I tried to convince the guys to do subtitles for me, and all I would say is yum num, yum num, yum.
Yeah, I put it in.
Yeah, because it would have to be Nick. Like I'd have to be like yum num, yum num, yum num, and Nick would have to, like Han Solo. He would essentially be my translator. So he would be doing double duty.
Matt would have to type. Yeah, he would have to type to me what he wants to say, and then I would have to, I was like, I'm not doing that.
That'd be fucking fantastic. That'd be a bigger shit show than it already is, but I think people would love the train wreck. That seems to be our MO. All right, Matt Lou, what do you say? Click, 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 click. Yum nub, yum nub, yum 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 nub. And Nick goes, yeah he says this.
Yeah,
Matt Lou says this. Oh shit. All right. Okay, sorry. Back on track. Sometimes I think I drive Trevor nuts during these things, but it's fun. All right, so yeah, I think this NABOO thing is definitely going to appear in Andor. I don't think they're repurposing it for another location. And if they are busting out NABOO, Nick, I could see it being reserved for top tier, so Cassian or Luthen or both. You know what I mean? I don't think you send just a Vel to NABOO, or maybe Cyril goes there looking for clues, but it feels like a Luthen stop first and foremost, maybe with Cassian in tow.
Yeah. I mean, at this point too, the people who are running the rebellion, and everybody knows that the Emperor is from Naboo. So like maybe it could have something to do with that. They're like, can we find any more information on this guy? Like, you know, that is also something that like, just in terms of like general canon now that we don't have a lot of information on, is like Palpatine's origins. Like we know that his
I would love that.
Master was, you know, like maybe something they're trying to find out. Like, does this guy have a weakness? Does he have any family that we could try to, you know, exploit or something like that?
I guess really kind of. No, they are still believing that he's Sheev Palpatine and he's just been disfigured by the Jedi, right? Like they.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't know like he's a Sith Force user, do they? At this point, I don't think so.
I don't think so, because it was like, I don't know if he ever has come out
Kira,
to the
and that's where again, this is where the comics come in and kind of fill in gaps. But it seems like Kira is like the only non-Force user or like power player in the galaxy that kind of figured out that Palpatine and Vader are Sith and not just two mean motherfuckers.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities.
There is okay. We've said this before. We'd sit here and jerk each other off if we got a Darth Vader live action, whatever. Just getting inside the mind of the man. We've kind of had his prequel, his backstory, not done in the best manner, in my opinion, via the prequels. Clone Wars definitely helped clean that up. But would you be just as down and excited for a Sheev prequel? Like kind of learning about him, like seeing both sides of his life when he was younger, where he was the diplomat and the smooth talking politician, but at night after he would do a shift in the Senate, he's hanging out with Darth Plagueis or whatever, learning the dark ways of the Sith.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's opportunity for that for sure. It's like for being as big of a main character as Palpatine is, like he's probably the one that we know the least about his backstory. I mean, we know everything about Anakin, like other than his
and with
birth, like the certainty of his birth, but like we know all of it.
And with the kind of the way they position him in the Rise of Skywalker is like. You had the Palpatine line of Force greatness and the Skywalker line of Force greatness. Two unchallenged lines in the Force that's never been seen before. It's produced this dyad, right? Like it's so potent. They produced a dyad in the Force. Where the fuck that is. So yeah, he's very important. They are saying essentially Palpatine's line of Force goo is just as important, historical, masterful, powerful as the Skywalker jizz. So yeah, I think he needs. You know what I want to see? What led him down that path? Was Sheev always fucked up? Did he always have a desire to conquer the galaxy through arcane Sith powers? Or did something happen? Was he just loaded with Force goo as a kid? Did he ever train as a Jedi? Like you would think someone as potent in the Force as Palpatine would have popped up on the fucking radar of the Jedi. He didn't. Or did he? We don't know. So yes, let's go. We're writing the fucking script right now. Pay us! Pay us, Lucasfilm!
Yeah, so I would love to see more on Palpatine. Whether it be through this, I mean, you probably can't get into it and
no.
It's a little too old. If anything, you may be able to dabble in like Sidious. Sidious was probably, or not Sidious. Plagueis was around. Sidious is Palpatine, obviously. Plagueis was probably around. May have been around during the time of the Acolyte. The Acolyte. I believe that, as far as we know, he was a Mun, or like Plagueis was a Mun, M-U-U-N, Mun. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, and there's some people saying he's a fucking Nemoidian. So it's like he's definitely not humanoid.
I don't think he's an Nemoidian.
He's definitely not humanoid.
If you look at the cover,
I guess he is humanoid if he has 2 arms and 2 legs. He's a
he's humanoid for sure. I mean, I don't know. I'll just look it up and see if like who he is or what he's listed as. On canon in Wikipedia or Star Wars Wiki, he's a Mun, M-U-U-N. He's a Moon, Mun, whatever the fuck it means. But that's what he is.
Isn't that the banking clan people? Were the banking clan the Munilists?
Maybe. Clovis Rush was, so Clovis was a intergalactic banking clan. Senator Clovis Rush was, he was raised by a family of Muns. Okay. He wasn't a Mun, but he was raised by them.
These were the banking clan people. I got an image up now. They got the very elongated faces. The best dude image for Mun Star Wars, and Olivia Munn shows up.
Oh my gosh. It's like I don't know what their lifespan is. Usually alien non-human, like humanoid species, are a little bit longer lifespan than like straight up humans are.
Yeah, I look at the ones, I'm like, how the fuck could they have been strong in the Force? I mean, they look like assholes. You know, you look like you just snap them in half without the Force. You just walk up and punch them in their guts, and their whole body would fold over. All right. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think but this J. Patrick person here makes a good idea. Palpatine prequel would be good, but would have to be very well done. Much like Yoda, the mystery adds to the character. Palpatine needs to be a sociopath from day one, but just reveal it slowly. All right. Yeah, that's what I see. Like, is Palpatine the kid at like 9 or 10 who's pulling the wings off of Gundarks and laughing at it and seeing what happens, you know, or grabbing a womp rat and stabbing it in the stomach and seeing how long before it bleeds out? Like, is that the type of shit young Sheev was into? Or was he studying NABOO politics or galactic politics? And he's just like, you know what? Fuck this shit. It's going to be way easier if I just become a Sith and take over the galaxy than try to do this politically. Just never know.
Yeah, I mean, it will be, if that gets made, and I think that there's probably good reason for it to get made.
Which means it won't. Like
that would be
any good idea we fans could come up with is never going to get made. So just hey, keep that fan fiction in your heads, my friends. All right, shifting away from that into James Mangold, the director of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the first person to do that outside of Steven Spielberg. And I read something where I think Spielberg turned around after he said, he's like, God damn it, James, I'm supposed to be the only one that can make a good Indiana Jones movie. And you gotta love Steve saying that. But we're not talking about any more Dial of Destiny with Mr. Mangold. We're talking about some interesting quotes he dropped while he was out promoting Dial of Destiny. Okay. So this comes from the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast on YouTube, one that actually gets viewed by more than 10 people. And James was there talking to their host, who seems to be in with a lot of Hollywood elites. Dude definitely gets the coverage. But an interesting thing came up, and he kind of asked me, he's like, James, we've kind of heard that you were potentially working on a Boba Fett project at some point in time. And James just flat out, it was like, yeah, I was. And I do think Lucasfilm has tried to be like, yeah, no, it's all rumor bullshit. But I tend to trust the directors because they're usually not going to go out and tell stories out of the fear of getting blacklisted in Hollywood. So I think James is telling the truth here. When asked, was he attached to a Boba Fett film? And he very much was, Nick. And he explained that he went as far as to kind of having a general script prepared, so he was actually writing it as well. And the reason we're talking about this, and is our question of the week. It's an interesting thing to think about, a what if you will. But he comes out and he said that his take on Boba Fett would have been borderline R-rated, a one-planet spaghetti western starring our guy. So it would have been, just a movie set on a planet, spaghetti style, with a leaning R rating, which means language is dialed up, violence obviously is going to be dialed up. I mean, if you're pushing R, you probably have, not that you'd have this in Star Wars, so it probably was more violence based, but you're probably getting like headshots, body parts getting blown off or amputated, and you get to see it. But clearly that never happened. And he went on to say, he's like, listen, the world wouldn't have been able to embrace Baby Yoda because he kind of didn't really belong in the world I was envisioning. So, Nick, it sounds like James was going for a much more hardcore take on the character, maybe closer to what people probably wanted. It sounded like it would have been closer to the Boba Fett that people used to explain to me, that showed up in Legends and comics, and he was such a badass. So my question to you, would you have wanted this over what we got? So like an R-rated Boba Fett solo movie, or the Book of Boba Fett where we got a little more time to kind of meet the real character of young Boba?
I mean, I think it's so hard to tell that because the storylines would have been so different. I think that an R-rated Boba Fett movie would be super interesting because I think it would allow for an exploration of the character that you can't really do with essentially like content that's made for like teens, or that are made for, like a more all ages audience. I think it would have done that character a little bit differently, and I think that for, like, on another note, I think that Tamira would have had more fun with it.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see it just because it would have been such a departure from what you typically see out of Star Wars, even that what you've seen out of the Star Wars, the Book of Boba Fett TV show, which was essentially like an extension of The Mandalorian, with Boba Fett kind of taking the reins as the main character. I think that there's still opportunity to do stuff like that, but I just don't know if there's going to be interest. I think that at this point, studios really need to figure out what the movie landscape looks like, because the movie landscape itself is in such a weird position right now. But I do think that an R-rated Boba Fett film, having him come back and maybe try to take revenge on the people who put him in the situation that he was in. I don't know. Like, I don't know what his story was about.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he didn't get into, would this have been pre-death, pre-Sarlacc, post-Sarlacc? He didn't really get into that. So we don't know. And I get that does open up the question of, all right, if it's pre-Sarlacc, then fuck yeah, let's go. Because that should be the very cold, hardened, bounty hunter, scoundrel-like FETT. The guy that was depicted in the War of the Bounty Hunters a few years back. That guy. Very clever, wily, but doesn't fuck around. I mean, dude, I told you, he like took out Zuckuss and Forlom. He took out Dengar. I mean, he was fucking them all up. Like, trying to kill them, but usually maimed them pretty bad, and they could come back and fight another day. Now, if it was post-Sarlacc, here's my take on this question, and obviously we'll get into this with the fans for the question of the week. I do like what happened with Boba Fett in the Book of Boba, but I also do agree that he did feel a bit neutered. Like, there was almost zero of his harshness left in him, which, hey, if you sit in an acid bath for a while and get beat up by Tuskens and learn the value of family, yeah, that probably could happen to a human. But like Tem has said and some others, it would have been nice if Book of Boba was a little edgier in terms of the action. And it would have been nice to see Boba slip into his old ways here and there as he was progressing towards becoming a little bit more of a more well-rounded bounty hunter, assassin type of character. So I don't know. Like I said, I do like the Book of Boba, but I would have loved to have seen the Boba that all of you used to yell at me about, and where we had the big blow up with some fans where I was kind of coming out there, the bozo FETT, that type of shit. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're probably new here. Go back into the archives and look for it. It was a fun time on the show. I'd essentially dress people down by name, and they didn't take too kindly to that. But I always thought Boba Fett was a bum. I mean, based on what you got in the OT, he had, I think, 3 or 4 lines and had Darth Vader and Empire do everything for him. And when it was his time to shine, he got killed by a blind guy in an accident. It was silly. Like, he was just a silly character that never looked tough outside of his badass armor. So I would have liked to have seen that, kind of come to light. Like, show me that Boba Fett. Show me the one that all you read in Legends and comics that was this big badass motherfucker. That would have been cool to see. But with hindsight, I do like the more benevolent Fett, with the caveat, it would have been nicer if Book of Boba was a bit more hardcore.
Yeah, I mean, Book of Boba Fett was definitely like the low point for me in the current run of Star Wars shows. I mean, I think that like it was interesting. I think that there were just a lot of mistakes in that show. There were a lot of mistakes in terms of like character development that should have been given to Boba Fett but weren't. There was a lot of issues with them just like if they wanted to just make another season of The Mandalorian, they should have, instead of just saying like, hey, we're going to make a Boba Fett series, but really like half the show is dedicated
out of 7 episodes, like
Mandalorian
he gets
stuff.
4.5, Din gets the other 2.5.
Yeah, and like that's like, I think that was a mistake. I think that there was just a lot of like, and I don't know like who to, I'm not trying to place blame or anything like that, but like that, like I don't know whose decision it was to essentially have that be like a split down the middle kind of series.
It's got to be Favreau. I mean, it is Favreau. He wrote the damn thing. I mean, I know Rodriguez show ran it, but Favreau wrote the story for Book of Boba Fett, 100%.
Yeah, and it just like it felt like an interlude story for him. Whereas I think they could have actually used it to not be an interlude story and actually be way more about character development and like setting him on a path, because essentially all of the shit that happened in the Book of Boba Fett doesn't matter anymore, because he's like, well, I don't want to do this anymore.
At the very end, as he wins, he's like, yeah, this kind of sucks.
Yeah, he's like you get all of this like build up to him becoming this daimyo or whatever shit that they tagged on it, and then at the end of the show he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So you've essentially just like you took all of the time in the show to get him to a certain point and then say like, well, none of that matters anymore because he doesn't like,
let's go back to kicking
to
ass and taking names, Fennec.
And like the character development that he experienced was so limited to basically like, hey, I don't need to be a lone wolf anymore. Like that's basically the only thing that he got out of that show. So
and
like, I don't know.
It's now looking like the book of BOBA is that's it. Like from MSW, it seems yes, BOBA will appear in the Mandoverse again, but not in his own series. It'll be Mando season 4 or tag-along type of stuff. All right, so continuing with Mangold, he also did confirm that this Boba Fett, his R-rated, got scrapped because of the Solo gate, if you will now, because it's a gate. Like Solo is a gate, just like Gamergate, Watergate, Impeachment Gate. It's a gate because it's bullshit. It's all you cranky people out there that are gonna get. You know, they're never going to make anything because of your little boycotts. Hey, Commander Gree, how's it going? All right, so I don't know if this is interesting, but it could be. But Mangold, you know, he did, Nick, in this interview, talk a little bit about Dawn of the Jedi, which he has been tapped to do. If it sees the light of day, who the fuck knows, right? I mean, we over here in the Star Wars Time show, we have decided that we will believe a movie is being made when we see the first trailer. I don't care about set pics, leaks, announcements, posters. I just, the way things have gone with Lucasfilm Cinema, I just can't believe anything until they've dumped enough money into it where they're comfortable putting a trailer out. But let's just say this all comes to be. He gets his Dawn of the Jedi set $25K before TPM. And, you know, in this interview, Nick, he's like, yeah, you know, the movie's going to be about the Dawn of the Jedi, but we're probably not going to use that term. And for some reason, the internet's like, what? I'm like, well, it makes complete sense. Like, if the Jedi didn't exist before the Dawn, how would they know to call themselves Jedi? So I dig that. I honestly, if this movie gets made, this is like my type of film. Like deep lore building, like the beginning of it all. This is the type of shit that gets me excited. That's like in the 90s when the prequels were made. My little teen brain was just nonstop, waiting for those insiders to come. Oh, they could do this. Oh, they could do this. I hope we see this. I hope we see Anakin do that. Blah, 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 blah. I love this shit. So the idea that we're going to see these Force beings kind of coming together and figuring out that they have these powers and that they can form this order and do good with these powers, and you know some will probably choose the opposite and do bad. But I think it would be cool to kind of see the moment where they're like, yeah, we are the Jedi.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that was like, you know, obviously goes into, you know, legends and stuff like that now, and the exploration of the discovery of the Force is probably what that's going to be based around. We already know that Tython's been recanonized, so I expect that they will lean heavily on that planet.
That'd be nice, you think? Like maybe they'll show the Seeing Stone being erected in the actual temple that we only see the guts of in the Mandoverse. That's what I mean, Nick. Like, yeah, you have all that potential.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton, and like you in the Star Wars: The Old Republic MMO, if you play light side characters, if you play a light side like Jedi character, Force user character, like you spend a lot of time on Tython. You go back to Tython a lot because that's where you start. Like you start your journey as a light side Jedi character in Star Wars: The Old Republic on Tython. And if you are a light side user, whether you be a smuggler or a trooper or something like that, you end up on Tython at some point in your journey. And that's because that is where, you know, in old canon and now legends, like that's where the Force was first discovered. It wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like it is now in Star Wars where like the Force is just everywhere. Like there was the discovery.
Midichlorians. Thanks, George.
You know, there was the discovery of the Force on Tython, and that's how the first Force users came about. Is like they were on this planet and they found this source of power, and they communed with this source of power, and they were instilled with it. And the Jedi Order, and I'm talking about JEDAII, not JEDI now, like it is now. Like that order sprung up, 36,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, like before Episode 4. So I mean, like what was happening at that time in Legends canon was a lot of just like discovery, and there was no Jedi and Sith yet because there was no differentiation between the two sides of this power at that time yet. Like they knew, like the people were still learning, like what is this? How can we use it? And all of this, like what does this mean for the greater, galactic civilization, and how is this going to affect everything else? I mean, there's a lot that can be discovered there, and I really do hope that this is one of the films that actually kind of gets through the gauntlet and actually gets made, because there's a lot of information that can be gained, and a lot of cool story that can be told around the founding of the Force, the foundation of the Jedi Order, and then ultimately the schism between what has now become Jedi and Sith, because at one time they were one. There weren't two factions. You could go into the Force Wars and all this other type of stuff. I want this to become
the new trilogy. I know a lot of people have freaked out because Kathy has said like, "Hey, we did what George set out to do. We completed the Skywalker saga," and I don't think she's wrong. I don't think that's an inflammatory statement either. I mean, George Lucas, for fucks, sure is going to have ideas about 25,000 years before and this, that, and the other thing, but that was never really his playground. That was always EU authors, right, Nick? I mean, George, it's not like he's like, no, it has to be this or these people, the Jedi. People have been playing in his universe for decades, but now all of a sudden it's a big problem that he hasn't owned it for a decade.
I mean, he didn't back in the day, like everything had to, all of the novels had to be approved.
Right. But
Lucas was not the one doing the approval. That was,
and that's why, I never really got into the EU stuff. Cause I was like, if this guy, if it's not from him, it ain't real. But we still have people that believe that when they have to realize George let this thing go voluntarily for $4 billion. He said, you know what? Someone else play with it. And that's okay. That was his choice. Disney's choice to buy it. Disney's choice to hire new creatives to play in it. So it's okay. Like George wanted this to happen. It's always happened. We've always had non-George stories fleshing out the random corners of Star Wars since it started. But it's just, it's a keyboard warrior social media. It just amplifies all the bullshit is what it is. Yeah.
I mean, in a lot of those old legend stories are some of my favorite Star Wars content out there. I mean, even aside from like Knights of the Old Republic, the game, like Darth Bane trilogy, like that was. No,
you're not wrong. Like what BioWare did with KOTOR, it really is one of the greatest Star Wars stories, especially set in that era that George wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Like I really do think George was concerned with the Skywalkers and the Skywalkers only. Yes, things branched off and built from that, but that was his mission. Yeah, he wanted to get one movie done. Once that, he figured out, okay, I made some money. And he's like, all right, I'm going to tell the other two, and then I'm going to go back and tell how we got here. That's what he wanted to do. Yes, he had light scripts for 7, 8, 9, but hey, guess what? He sold those to Disney too, and they said no, thank you. I don't agree with that. I think Bob should at least looked at him and maybe said, hey, Kathy, let's try to use some of this, or at least let it guide us. And hey, by the way, let's not let random artists do every movie. Let's try to have one writer or whatever. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I do hope Dawn of the Jedi, whatever the fuck it's going to be called. I don't think that's the real name. I hope it sees the light of day. I hope it's great, and I hope he he and Lucasfilm have plans to keep playing in that era. Like, I really don't want this to be a one and done. Like, how do you do a one and done on the Dawn of the Jedi? It'd be weird, unless it's a 3-hour movie. I mean, it's just like, you know, people playing around a campfire. Oh, look at that! Look at the light. Ah, look, we can float rocks. Let's use our powers for good. Oh, look at that asshole! He's killing people with it. That's bad. The end. You know what I mean? Like, you got to establish some a hero, the bad guys and girls. You got to set up, you know, their what are their motivations. Who are we going to follow? Who's going to kind of deliver the narrative to the audience? And I don't know. I feel like that suits itself for more than one film, but we shall see.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it could definitely be an opportunity to really. I mean, like, I look at it as an opportunity to really be the jumping off point for exploration and expansion of the Old Republic.
Yeah, like
and I think that is.
Here's Disney's.
It's just the most interesting time in Star Wars, period. Well, it's not even close.
Nick, you're so far removed from the attraction and the nostalgia of the Skywalker saga, too. Like, you can fucking do whatever you want. 25,000.
I mean, like, there were
there's no fucking chosen ones. There's none of this bullshit. Yeah, it's just, it's literally like, I envision it now that you kind of gave me a picture. It's you know, they're probably not like Neanderthals and cavemen, but, you know, simpletons almost. Ooh. Like, I mean, and Nick goes,
I think that, like, you have to have, like, there is an understanding that, like, even pre-Force, the Star Wars galaxy was way more advanced than our
that's what I mean. It wasn't a good example, but that's kind of like what it's like these people that discover the Force, you know, they could be like, ooh, you know, like a Space Odyssey and worshiping the monolith type of shit. So you never know.
So yeah, I mean, also, don't forget that, like, before, like, when the Force is first discovered, lightsabers are not a thing. It was literally, they had swords, like physical swords that were just imbued with Force power. Like, you could see Force power just flowing through the blade itself. So I'm very interested to see exactly how they are going to, like, handle that, like, in stuff. I like this is one of the more interesting projects for me overall, and I really do hope that
I'm with you.
Actually,
so I guess that's a good thing, because our next topic is related to James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi. So everyone's favorite studio exec, Kathleen Kennedy, was sitting down with Game Radar. I think their sister outlet grabbed this. I don't see someone like Kathy meeting with Game Radar, but anyways, she was talking about the Daisy Ridley Rey movie that we know is a thing, if it is a thing. I mean, they at least walked out the talent on stage at Celebration as, hey, we're doing a thing. So we'll see, but she was asked kind of how the Rey movie is going to break new ground, considering that she won't be the first character to try and rebuild the Jedi Order. I mean, that's essentially what the sequel trilogy was supposed to show through Luke. And we've seen this before. You know what I'm saying, Nick? Like, we've seen a powerful Force user trying to rebuild the Order. So anyways, here's what Miss Kennedy said. I think what's always great about Star Wars, it's a big galaxy, and we're coming off what was a major war with the First Order. And now, Rey has made a promise to Luke, and that's really the core of where we're going and what this story will be. And I think it offers just tremendous opportunity to introduce new characters and start with something fresh. Because we culminated with what George was creating, and now we take all of that and move it to the next. That's it. Okay, that's a statement that got people fired up last week. All right. But hopefully if you're normal and you heard me read that, like, that, to me, that's not inflammatory whatsoever, correct? What she's saying about George?
I don't even know what would be.
Nick, I think they take it as, like, George is God, and the fact that she's saying we're moving on from God is like it's a cardinal sin, I guess.
I don't know, honestly.
But either way, so you know, we're moving to the next chapter, yada, yada, yada. And this is where she starts to talk about how the Rey movie is going to link to the movie we just talked about. Rey's trying to rebuild the Order. Dawn of the Jedi is showing how the Order came to be. So she goes into James' movie and how the Order came to be, and that this is an era that George himself was interested in. And she said, that's come up a lot. From the moment I stepped in and George brought me into the company, there's been a lot of interest in that. So apparently the maker does have some ideas on the Dawn of the Jedi. I would just hope if he is physically well that they let Mangold at least talk to him. Okay? That's one thing. Like, listen, if George is there and he's willing to share some thoughts on an era of uncovered Star Wars, I personally do think you owe it to yourself as a creative to at least listen to those thoughts. Is that a fair statement, Nick, or fuck George?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely worth listening.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's definitely worth like listening to what his thoughts are. I mean, that's what JJ did. I mean, JJ had to sit down with him and talked about what his thoughts were on the series and stuff like that and where he would go.
And then they just did everything different. But yeah, that's your choice, right? I mean, when you own the IP, you own the IP, and you got to remember, George doesn't own it anymore. Again, tying this all back together, since Mangold's film is going to be about the genesis of the Force and the First Order of Jedi that wield it, this is where she's like, hey, the Rey's movie, this movie, they are going to be linked. It was something that Jim immediately sparked to, and I think it's a really nice compliment to what we're doing with moving into the future with Rey, and then understanding a bit more of where this all came from, because it will be at the heart of creating the new Jedi Order. So to get a real sense of where that might have began with the Dawn of the Jedi could be pretty cool. Okay? Yes. Agreed. Now, Nick, does that mean we get Dawn of the Jedi before the Rey movie? I doubt it, right? I think the Rey movie is probably going to be the first to theaters.
That's definitely going to be the first one.
So,
go
ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, there's one. It's the only one that we have like solid information on in terms of
the leakers have even had like a steady flow of confirmed shit. So this one does seem to be the Rey movie. That is, seems to be the most actively in development right now.
Yeah.
I could see if the Rey movie comes first, I could see them putting like items in there, be it books, lessons, caves, hieroglyphics. Maybe she goes to a Tython area, and then we get to see that in its prime in Dawn of the Jedi. Like, I would almost prefer that. Like, I like, again, the idea of the prequels to me was awesome, because my mind was like, oh my God, the potential and what they could show me with the Jedi Order and Anakin and Obi-Wan and blah, 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 and the twins. I do kind of like seeing what comes last and then seeing how it got there. Does that make sense? So if we do see Rey kind of visit some of these locations that may show up in Dawn of the Jedi, I guess I would like to see her movie first to kind of get the context in the future, and then we get to see how all that came to be in Dawn of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Hey, Tones.
I think that she's...
Go ahead.
I think that she'll also like draw from these texts, like where did these texts come from, stuff like that too. Because I think that these books that she like took from the tree, whatever the tree was, like those have to be ancient books. Did those come from the time of the Dawn of the Jedi? Did it come after that? Like, when were these texts written and stuff? There's a lot of like exploration of like where she's like building her tent, like what she's building her tenants off of and stuff like that.
You are right. I mean, the books clearly have to play a major role, because they were starting to play a major role in The Rise of Skywalker. It's how she taught herself the healing and learned about Exegol, so on and so forth. So I think you're right. And the books actually, again, the comics have been pretty fantastic in terms of lore check-ins and building. But Luke actually gets one of the texts you see him with in the tree in between Empire and Jedi, and he gets it in like some freaky Force planet dream, and a High Republic Jedi kind of gave it to him through the Force. So these things have definitely been passed down like a scroll, if you will, or, the scriptures, so on and so forth. So I think you're spot on. The books would probably be the most direct tie between those films and the eras. You would probably see them penning the books in the movies.
Yeah, very possible.
Not sure. Dude, we essentially just pitched a Dawn of the Jedi where it'd be like watching a monk become a monk. So there'd be like no dialogue and just writing in scrolls the whole movie to capture the lessons of their masters. Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we do this podcast and we don't write screenplays. Okay, let's kind of shift away from the movies that probably will never see the light of day into something that is going to see the light of day, and that is Skeleton Crew. So last week, an interview came out between Jude Law, who is going to be one of the stars of the show, and this guy Chris Ford, who is one of the showrunners. And they kind of discussed the feel and the tone of the show. You know, we know the main cast is going to be kids. So obviously there's a lot of questions like, who's this for? Who's Skeleton Crew for? Is this going to be like some kiddie bullshit? Are we going to have Technicolor Vespas again? Or is this going to be proper Star Wars? So, Watts, the main creator here, says, like, listen, it's going to be a story about a group of kids about 10 years old from a tiny little planet who accidentally get lost in the Star Wars galaxy. So Skeleton Crew is going to be the story of their journey trying to find their way home. Think Goonies, those types of movies where, yes, the kids are the stars, but they're kind of going through some pretty horrific scenarios that maybe adults have caused. So they go further in here. Here's Chris Ford on the tone of Skeleton Crew and what fans should expect. So first and foremost, he says, Skeleton Crew's tone is an adventure. We want it to be a lot of fun, but of course, along with adventure comes the downside of it, which is danger. And when the kids are in danger, it's extra fraught. So we played with that. But overall, we want it to be just a fun adventure. Hopefully it can be for all ages. When we told Kathy Kennedy about that, we wanted to go for that Amblin tone, which she perfected over the years. What she would say is that they never thought of those as movies for kids. They just happen to be about kids, a story of a kid going on an adventure. So it could be for anyone.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what E.T. Like E.T. is the same thing. Like E.T. it's a story about kids, but the adventure itself is not only for kids.
I mean, if you think about the shit going in it, it's dark as fuck. Like an alien showed up, the government's like harassing a family for it. The little kid has a bond with it, so you have all those emotions that kids may deal with when they're young. So yeah, the Skeleton Crew is definitely not sounding like it's just going to be some campy G bullshit. It's just the kids are kind of the vehicle. It's going to get dark, as Ford and them are saying. So the interview, you start talking to Jude, who apparently now he can't say if he's a Jedi or not. But I know just a month or two ago, I think it was like from StarWars.com that says he's a fucking Jedi. But he won't admit it anymore, even though in the trailer celebration he was seen levitating stuff. But here's how he explains his character and what to expect. I can't tell you very much about my character. He was someone that children meet on their attempt to get home. So clearly he's not a teacher. They're going to get lost and then they stumble into Jude's character. He is like a lot of the world that they experience, contradictory, and at times a place of nurture and other times a place of threat. So I like that. It's like Nick, it seems like they're going to run into this guy and he is going to help them, but he doesn't sound like he's going to be like a Luke Skywalker, where he's all light and he's there to help. Like he may have some shady things going on, or he may have some leverage that he may try to get over these kids as well. So he goes on to talk about the young characters and how the fans are going to kind of experience a story through them and how it's going to get dark. So again, this isn't going to be all cute and cuddly, let's have fun Barney hour. All right, he says, because it's through their eyes. At times there's a sort of goofy nature and a goofy relationship between the kids and the adults. And then other times, it's really quite dark and quite scary, which I guess is what the world probably looks like to an awful lot of 11-year-olds. So it sounds like these kids are going to get into some fucked up shit, and I kind of dig that. So, Nick, what's one messed up scenario you could see these kids getting in?
I mean, if they're truly like, if this is like truly like a Goonies situation where they're on their own and like they come and do, like if they like, you know, steal like a ship or something like that and like make their way off planet, it's very easy for them to like get caught up, like especially at this time with the Nihil. Like the Nihil is
no. Remember, this is Mandoverse.
Oh, this is Mandoverse.
So it's probably going to be pirates,
warlord, some sort of fucking
pirates,
and like Imperial Remnant stuff. Pirates.
Yeah, our boy Vane. You know, our boy Vane from Mando is going to show up. But to me, I think you're right. I think there some hijinks is going to happen on their home world where they end up in a starship that maybe they didn't pilot off, maybe Jude's character pilots off, maybe someone else, or maybe it's just AI controlled, who the fuck knows, or maybe they do steal it. And once they get out there, they realize quick, like, oh fuck, the galaxy definitely is way bigger than just our local atmosphere. And before you know it, they're being boarded by pirates or other shitheads. Remnant Empire could be out there messing with them. Bounty hunters, obviously. This now creepy sounding Force user that Jude Law is playing. Because I don't know about you, but what he's saying to me, Nick, is like, yeah, you know, my guy is okay. He is going to help them at times, but he also could make things could get kind of dark even if he's with these kids at times. So
yeah, I mean, if you're like just bumming around the galaxy, it is definitely easy to run into some stuff that you're not quite prepared for yet. So,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, this show is it does intrigue me, and I thought we were gonna get it by the end of this year. I think we still might. You never know, though. They really haven't done anything on it outside of these little interviews. But I like the concept. I like that, you know, anytime you're breaking away from proper Skywalker saga stuff and allowing fans to just kind of embrace the galaxy in a different way, I'm always down for that experiment. Unlike some fans, I'll go into it with a positive mindset. Remember, I'm only positive about Star Wars, negative about everything else in life. But I'm down. Listen, I want to see this character that Jude's playing. I think that's what I'm most intrigued about. I'm not saying I'm anti the kids. They may be great. But I like what Jude's selling in these cryptic quotes here, because he doesn't sound like your typical goody two-shoes Force user. He sounds like someone that understands that he can use his abilities to accomplish many different things in a galaxy where the New Republic doesn't quite have a lockdown approach on the entire system.
Yeah, and like I doubt that. Like I know that before we were talking about like, is he a Jedi? Is he not a Jedi? I mean, it's very possible that he just never was a Jedi. Like we're at a point now in the galaxy where like if say Jude Law's in his early 40s, late 30s. I don't know how old they're going to place his character, but like it's very possible that like this is 27 years, somewhere around there, 25 years after Fall of the Republic.
Yeah, at least.
Actually, it's probably longer.
It's
than
close
that.
to probably close to 30.
Yeah, somewhere around there. So like, because A New Hope is 19 years after Fall of the Republic, and this takes place, what was it? 7 years post
Return of the Jedi.
ROTJ.
Yeah. Well, that's when
so like,
when the Mandalorian season 1 supposedly took place. So,
yeah, so
we might be 2 or 3 years beyond that at this point. So maybe 10 years beyond Jedi.
Yeah. 10 years beyond Jedi. I mean, that puts you like fucking 30, almost 4. That's almost 40 years post. God, it's so hard. Post Revenge of the Sith, right? Like, So it's very possible that this guy is just a force user. Like he just has the ability to use the force and was never never had the opportunity to train.
Yeah, I mean Jude
never was.
I know Jude's older, but he's a guy that you could argue could play like a late 30s type still probably. So
yeah, you know, he still looks pretty young, but that, like, to me, that would be interesting. That would be a little bit more interesting. Yes,
because let's get away from, a Jedi that was hiding. Like, I know, you know, we did this a few weeks ago, but I do think it's getting a bit ridiculous. It's like, come on. Yeah. And for all you motherfuckers that you know, hey, George. I mean, George is the one that said they're all fucking gone. All right?
Yeah. And it's also like, it's okay to have, it's even okay to have a Force user in the prequel timeline that is not a Jedi. Like it is impossible for the Jedi as they were set up to find every Force user as they were born.
Right.
Like it's just not possible. Right. So I mean, like it's okay. You're 100% if we run
correct,
into
especially when George made the Force literally a genetic thing. Like, I mean, it's the Force is truly, it's not something you really have to study. I guess, you can to get even better at it. I think he's gone on to say, like, anyone could potentially use the Force. There's a little bit in everybody, but some people get more of the DNA than others.
Exactly. So, like, I would really like to see more of that. Like, especially in this Mandoverse timeline where it's like you push yourself far enough out from, like, the fall of the Republic where you had like formal Jedi training happening, and we haven't gotten to the point yet where like Luke is like doing hardcore recruitment for the new Jedi Order that he was building. That like you should have interactions with like these floating Force users out there, like these people out there who have access to the Force, who have almost like in a sense like kind of like Rey, that is like that discovers their Force powers on their own and don't have anybody to train them and doesn't have an idea of like what they should do with it, but does use it for like tricks and shit. Like they can't, like this was something that I had like written in a story, like a Star Wars story a long time ago. But, like one of my main characters was like somebody who like was never trained fully as a Sith or a Jedi. But like he knew he could use the Force, and he would use the Force to like trick people, or he was like a thief and he would use it in that kind of capacity. So like I think that discovering or exploring characters around that type of, you know, character archetype would be super interesting, especially in the Mandoverse, because it's such a place of like wild and open possibility, because there's no like hard grip from any sort of galactic government on it, that like you can have people like that are just floating out there, that are just existing.
All right, Nick.
So I do hope that his character is not
for
just a fucking Jedi.
If you're one of these floating Force users, like you personally, how do you use your power?
Oh my God, dude, that's such a good question. And it's such a hard thing to figure out too, because it's like, you know, like I would almost like encourage the person who is like thinking about joining our game to like play a character like that. But it's like, because it's such an interesting thing, because like if it's almost like the question, like when you were posed the question as a kid, like if you could pick a superpower to have, what would it be, and what would you do with it? Like, I don't know. It almost like would lend itself to just being like mischievous, right? Like
that's where I'm going.
Yeah, like, you know, like you could be a thief so easily. Like, you know, you could run racket, like you could be a pickpocket so easily.
See, I would do Robin Hood style though. Like I'd go after like big money, like, you know, the 1%. That's what I'd go after.
Yeah. And the thing is like, there's no way for you as a floating Force user to be like, I am going to be a force of good for it. Like it's almost impossible to be a force, like a vigilante Force user, right? Because the word spreads too fast, and then factions that are like super anti Force users, super anti Jedi, if they see you like, oh, this Force user took down this
you're marked.
warlord.
You're marked.
yeah, you're like they're coming for you. Like, and it doesn't matter if it's Mandoverse or anything like that. There are still active factions out there who are like super anti-Jedi, or like who are hunting like the remnants, or like who are like hunting Force users for experimentation, like we've seen with Moff Gideon and all of the other Imperial remnant out there who are working on the Exegol project. So it's almost like you have to be this underhanded kind of like thief or Robin Hood type of character, like you've said, because that's the only way, one, that you can stay safe, and then two, that you could really use your powers in a way that's advantageous to you, and then also kind of like trying to help the people around you. So I think that would probably be the best way to do it, is almost be like a Force user Robin Hood.
That's like, listen, I love to play some villain on the internet. I'm not. I'm a big fucking sappy dope that does ultimately care about things. But I would, if I had these abilities, I would use them in a way, like Nick said, that I could kind of protect myself while fucking up the power. And then I would use that to build up enough of my own power to then kind of make it larger, a movement, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most fun thing about this like thought experiment, or about like non-aligned Force users in general, is that like you don't know what they're going to do. Like when you encounter a Jedi, you're like, okay, they're a Jedi. This is their tenets of belief. This is how they would train people. This is how they would conduct their
definitely not going full
existence.
Jedi. Fuck that. I mean, no way.
Like Sith is a little bit more like, if you encounter a Sith, you have a very good idea of like their tendencies, their goals, and everything that kind of encapsulates their like belief system and how they view the Force. But if you encounter unaligned Force users, it's such a wild card. Like they could lean a little bit more dark, they could lean a little bit more light. You could run into an unaligned Force user who is literally just a healer, like they're a doctor, or something like that, and they use the Force to heal people, to help people with sicknesses or injuries. Or you could lean a little bit more on the other side, and you could have, and this is kind of what I was pitching for like the Balin character in the Acolyte, is like you have an unaligned Force user that is a mercenary.
He's Ahsoka, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, Ahsoka. I'm getting all this shit confused.
That's why I'm here, buddy.
Like to have a character like that be just a straight up merc, and is not like, I'm not a dark side guy. Like I'm not a Sith. Like I use the powers that I have to further my own goals of being a mercenary or something like that.
I would
being a
definitely
bounty, like,
kill people. I would not have a problem with that. Like if they were fucking with me or people in need, I would just, shoot.
But it's not
snapping necks.
Like to me, it's not interesting to be like, I'm a mercenary who was formerly a Sith. It's like, well, now we know why you were a mercenary. You're a fucking murderer anyway.
That's what you do.
Like, but it's like if you do the character exploration of like, this guy came into his Force ability on his own, trained himself, or figured out how to use his abilities the best that he can on his own, then you get to see his development as a person, not as a Force user, because that's what we've kind of been shunted to. Is like we've only seen development as a Force user, because even when we meet Luke, his life development up to that point's already done. Like he's 19, 20 years old. He's an adult. Like we don't get to see his development as a like from a child to that point. We only get to see his development as a Force user. And it's the same thing with Rey. Like when we meet Rey, she's 19, 20 years old, and then we pick up her story and we see her development as a Force user. But like, and as a Force user specifically under the tenets of the Jedi. But it would be so interesting to see the development of a Force user on their own without somebody leading them to say like, this is how you should use it. This is how you should use it. And like, just see how people organically come to their powers and decide how to use it.
Bunch of regular schmoes running around with the Force. I'd love to see that. It's like, you get the Force, I got the Force. We gots the Force. All right.
I mean, that's what Ryan was trying to go for, right? Is like the Force is for everybody. Let's explore what can happen if the Force is
I still love that take because I still was like, oh yeah, but Palpatine's, well, what about the Kenobis and the Yodas of the galaxy? Like, come on, people, you can have boss level Force users if they don't have a famous last name. That's all I've ever been saying, and that's why I do not like the Rise of Skywalker. She should have been Rey from nowhere. Period. Fuck you. All right. Let's we got one more before we get into this week's fan segment. This is kind of a fun one, Nick. Here, I'm gonna try to turn it up so they can hear it on the live stream here, maybe. But just a little setup here. So Emilia Clarke is in the MCU now. She's in Secret Invasion. So she's doing some press with Ben Mendelsohn, who is, another famous actor that has both been in Star Wars and now in Marvel. So, Nick, it appears they're out doing some press for Secret Invasion, and Ben kind of sets her up with a question like, hey, would you ever reprise your Star Wars character role? And the reaction on Emilia's face and body language implies that it may have already happened. So what we're going to do here is what this could have been. But here, let me play it real quick. At least those on the live stream, you might be able to see it. And if it's loud enough, maybe you'll be able to hear it. Oh, nope, you won't be able to hear it because it's going through my headset. But here, you can read the
captions.
Yeah, she goes, well, you know what? And she looks at him like, save me. And
she's like, I've seen a few interviews with Emilia before. I've never seen her react to a question like that.
Yeah, it was just, it was deer in headlights. Like,
it was like,
what do I say?
What can I say? What do I say?
So I
think the big takeaway here is that we know that this Lando series is something that they're still serious about. We know that this is something that that Donald Glover is very interested in. He's already said that that he's still super down to do it. We already heard from Kathy that they're still super down to do it. If she's coming back, it's got to be in that series, right? Like it's got to be right.
Well,
there.
I have another idea, actually, I didn't even think about that. So good on you. But if we think about Star Wars Outlaws, right? It's set in between Empire and Jedi. The character of Kira plays a major role in that time period with the crime syndicates. Nick, this is when the whole War of the Bounty starts because of her auction for Han Solo and Carbonite. And then that leads into her plan to take down the Sith. So I could see Kira being a front and center NPC in Star Wars Outlaws. Like either someone
Do you really think she would have that reaction if she was literally just I did voice lines for a video game.
For a character like that, you can't say you're in a project for sure. I mean, just NDA type of reaction, yes.
If that's what it is, I'd be so fucking disappointed.
Well, I have a feeling and it may be Lando too. Like you're not wrong. She makes perfect sense for that. But Lando to me, I still think is far off and may not happen. Where Outlaws we know it's a done deal. I mean, it's out. We got dates, so on and so forth. And considering Kira is such a major player in the criminal underworld during the time that this game is set. I think there's high potential for the digital version of Emilia Clarke to show up in that.
I'm going to put this out here too. Like more often than not, when characters are brought into video games, especially in like little parts like that, the people that voice them aren't even the people who play them. Like, let's be real. Do you think that Ubisoft is going to pay Emilia Clarke? Like, unless she just decided to do it for nothing. Or like she was just like, yeah, I guess you can pay me whatever.
I think didn't they got Oscar Isaacs to get his voice, I think, in a few of the games before he was like, oh, let me look at my contract.
Yeah, I mean, that was like early days. Like he technically did his voice in Resistance, but like after that, he was like, yeah, I'm not doing this shit again. Like, are you fucking crazy? Like, it would be super surprising to me if that's what she was vacillating about, because it's just so small, and I don't even think that they would have reached out to her. If they were going to put her in it, I feel like if they were going to put Kira in it, I feel like that, like, maybe you reach out to her and say like, hey, do you want to do this like on the cheap? Like, we'll throw you some cash, but it's not going to be a lot. And like, you just do these voice lines and get it over with. Like the way that she reacted almost seemed like she has knowledge of something that we don't know about yet. And is something that may not be like in active development, but is like heavily in discussion is kind of the thing that I'm thinking. And I'm not like, seriously, if that's it, like if it comes out as like she is reprising her role as Kira in Star Wars Outlaws, it'd be like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, well,
like
here,
really?
Some of the commenters are like, what'd they say here? Ubisoft said that Lucasfilm advised them on characters they could possibly bring into the story. Crimson Dawn auction and out. Like, these are just idiots on Twitter, so you never know. Rubbing my hands together maliciously. Also, it's the hidden cut for me. Look at the way that Ben Mendelsohn steps in, blah, blah, blah. Must have been either really... okay, whatever. All right. Either way, this interview and her reaction does lead me to believe
she's coming
that we're
back
going to see her in something. And I tend to lean towards Nick's going to be disappointed. That's where I'm at on this one.
I mean, that's not surprising because, there's a lot of disappointment to go around.
I think this is it, man. I really do think they're just saying, we're going to use your name, image, and likeness in a video game. Do you want to use your voice too?
What a, yeah. I mean, if that's it, then don't even
you know what? Like, I want Lando to happen, but I think they're going to quiet kill that one because they don't.
I don't think so.
They don't want to deal with the young Han stuff and Kathy going out and saying we'll never use young actors again. Like another bold statement.
I think that there's still life in that because Donald Glover is starting to act again. Like for a while, for a long time.
That makes sense. Like he has said this in the past, right, Nick? Where like he'll only rap for a few years, or he'll only write, or he'll only act. Like he goes in cycles of his creativity.
Yeah, and like now it's confirmed. So like they were making. I don't know if you watch Community or if like you were a fan of Community when it was out, but like Community is now becoming a movie. It's going to be released on Peacock. It's being developed by NBC. Up until like 2 weeks ago or last week, everybody was coming back except for Chevy Chase and Donald Glover. And it was because nobody knew if Donald was done, like had the time, if he was going to continue doing his rapping stuff. And like now it's confirmed that he's going to be in the Community movie. Like he's coming back. 100%. He's in. So now is like, he's like, I'm ready to act again. So if he's coming back for that, and we know that he loves the role of Lando, and we know that they love him in the role of Lando, it would make sense for him to be like, hey, let's get it going. And if that's the case, you get the band back together, depending on the timeline that you're placing this in. Like, are you going to do Lando after we see him in Solo, or are you going to do Lando before we meet him in Solo? Like, there's a lot of questions around like when this could be set.
That's it right there.
If it's before,
that's it right there. That's how they skirt the Alden thing. And I liked Alden, but apparently he's not allowed to play that character. But you are right there because Kira and Lando clearly had an established relationship.
Yeah. So I think that it's possible that that is her angle.
Nick,
to get
does this
back
make
in,
sense to you?
Like,
Hashtag 6 seasons in a movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right. J. Patrick's with you then. They get the 6.
Yeah, no, it's a Community thing. Basically, like from season 1 in Community, one of the characters had like a little, like a side joke where like he was super into television and he would always talk about like 6 seasons in a movie. So that's like, that became the meme for Community is like, it'll have 6 seasons in a movie that's what it's going to be.
All right. Well, hey, keep on a lookout for this youngly love lady, but it sounds like we could be seeing Kira again, either in digital, like pure digital, like computer generated form, or we could see her live action. But her reaction does kind of make it seem like she's at least talked to Lucasfilm, if not already worked for Lucasfilm again on Star Wars. Okay, well, I think it's time to funnel this episode towards its closing moments. But before we get there, you know what we got to do? We got to do The fan segment, that's right. Question of the week and our top 5 fan artist features. We do it every week. One of the only stupid podcasts out there to dedicate a segment to their fans. So we always ask questions on Instagram at Star Wars Time Show. Typically when we do our live, so on Tuesday. This week we did it on Wednesday. Just check out at Star Wars Time Show. Turn on notifications. Like us, love us, click us. Do what you got to do to juice that AI. And then you just got to reply to it. And then we will talk about your comments and either say you're stupid or smart. Okay? Sounds like fun, right? You got to put yourself out there on the internet. You never know what's going to happen. So let me go ahead and get things switched up here real quick. We need this and that and this and that. All right, perfect. So the question of the week this week, and we always try to theme it around one of our topics. So I asked you all, would you have preferred an R-rated Boba Fett film or what we got in the Book of Boba, and why? We got some good responses here, Nick. I'll start with the stories, and then I'll sit back and hopefully laugh as you go through the comments. So up first, Carl Pullen says, R-rated, he's a hardened bounty hunter. Be great to see the War of the Bounty Hunter story arc played out in a gritty style. I would love to see that too. It was a fun little comic book run, and like I said earlier, Boba definitely fucks up the competition. One by one. Good stuff. Yeah. Carl P.
I think that would be great. I think that particular storyline that he picked out would be a fantastic one. And I think that like Mangold would have had fun with that.
And Mangold, for the most part, makes pretty good films. I mean, Dial was good. Logan was good.
Logan was good.
Didn't he do the other Wolverine? Didn't he do 2 Wolverines or just Logan? Did he do the?
I'm not sure because
he didn't do
the Wolverine was the one that was set in Japan. I'm not 100% sure if that was
Mangold done. That's big. I know there's at least.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Director.
Yeah.
Dial, Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah,
so
that movie's fucking kick ass. By the way, have you ever seen Ford v Ferrari? That's good shit.
Not yet. I have not seen it, but I do want to see it.
It's very good.
He did do the Wolverine, so the one that was set in Japan.
Okay, yeah. So he did the last 2 Wolverines.
He did Walk the Line, 310 to Yuma.
Okay, yeah, he's good.
Like he did good. He's done good shit.
He's good.
He's done very good.
Good. So you're not wrong. All right. Next from mad.like.a.clone. Yes, because Boba Fett is a R-rated character. Simple fact. Sweaty emoji. Okay emoji. Or is that, would you call that sweaty emoji? Or is that like, what's the one where it's like smiling, but then there's a bit of water on the right side of the face?
Yeah, it's like nervously.
Oh, nervous laughter.
It almost looks like a nervous smile,
Okay.
but I don't know. I don't think that's what this guy was going for. Honestly.
Hey, either way, I like trying to decipher emojis. Our boy Johnny. An R-rated film would have given the character of Boba the liberties to be more the ruthless killer he is, but I feel that the cramming of story in a 120-minute movie in the chapter that was given to us from the series would have left us feeling the same. And after watching Dial Destiny, the choice of director wouldn't have mattered. Okay. I'm taking that as we don't like Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
All right, Nick.
But I think that he has like a very, like, I think that Johnny is under the impression that they would have made the Book of Boba Fett show a movie with the same story. Like, that's how he's looking at it. And I don't know. One, that's almost assuredly not how it would have gone. I feel like once the Boba Fett movie moved from a movie to a show, they completely reimagined how the story was going to go. Because at the point where it's not a movie and it's a show, they give it to Favreau and they're like, "Here, John, you do whatever you want to do with it." And I think that like because of the who was developing it, the story would have been wildly different from the movie side to the show side. So I don't know if that's how it would have happened, but I mean, yeah, maybe Johnny didn't like Dial of Destiny.
Okay, we can still love him. He can still play. It's all right.
He's a good guy.
Yeah,
if he starts shit talking indie, then me and Johnny are going to be on.
Yeah, I was gonna say
we're not gonna be on speaker.
we like everyone until you start saying really stupid shit about Star Wars, and then we don't like you. How's that? All right, Nick, I'm turning over the reading to you. Pixel Rope.
All right. Pixel Rope says, this is quite the question. The answer depends on the time period in which the story takes place. For the book timeline, I don't hate what we got, but it was obviously affected by pandemic shooting schedules. Could it have been better and a little grittier rather than the lighter tone we got? Sure. That said, I don't know that the story or where Fett is as a character with the Mando storyline makes sense for an R-rated film. If there was an R-rated film spanning the original trilogy that runs through the Sarlacc Jedi moment and ends with him crawling out leading into the show, that could work and give the character a full arc of badassery, realization, and evolution. And frankly, that seems to fit in with the clones storyline overall. No, I agree with Pixel Rope on here. I think that like if there was an opportunity, like, and I think that like now we're kind of talking about this movie as in like it was going to be a thing, not it is going to be a thing. But if they took,
it is a was and forever will be a was.
Yeah. So like, but what Pixel Rope is pitching here as like a prequel Boba Fett movie,
it's kind of what I said, Nick, but they said it much more succinctly.
Yeah. So I think that like, if we're living in a universe where both properties exist, where the show exists and the movie exists, then this would be the perfect thing.
I agree.
Is to agree. It's to kind of show his, show Boba Fett's like rise and fall in a movie form, and then again, like have that be continued on in the show itself. So I think that would be an interesting way to do it, and I think it's a cool idea from Pixel Rip.
Job well done, Pixel Rip. I believe they're from Pittsburgh, so it makes sense that they had a good thought on Star Wars that I agree with. Thank you.
Darth LVJ is next up, and he says, I thought the Book of Boba Fett was a fine addition to the Mandoverse, and it gave us insight into Boba during this time. I prefer Star Wars stay away from the R-rated scene because Star Wars has always been a family affair. I enjoy watching Star Wars with my children and have common ground with something I love. Besides, Star Wars has always been themed around family. Yeah, I mean, he does have a good point to that. And if you watched, I know, Matt, this is the first time that I can say this. I know, Matt, you have not watched the behind the scenes.
I know. I gave us homework and Nick fucking executed and I did not.
I know that you haven't watched it yet, but the behind the scenes for Mandalorian season 3, that comes up again from Dave, is like Star Wars is about family. Star Wars has always been about family.
We'll talk about next week, but you are fair to call me out. I fucked up.
And I know that, so that's kind of what and that's what George has always said. Star Wars is about family. So I can see Darth LVJ's kind of perspective.
It can still
here.
be about family with a few headshots and arms getting chopped off.
You're definitely right.
A few F-bombs.
It's how you implement the R rating, and I think that like R rating now comes relatively easily. Like in the past, an R rating was like
it's a crime. What gets rated R these days? Like I think if you have more than 2 fucks, it's automatically rated R.
It's automatically an R. I think you get 1 free fuck in PG-13. You get 1, but as soon as you have 2, you're R. And then like
you notice how they like some, and look, I get it. You want it to be PG-13 because your audience base is larger, but you'll go to movies where, you got guys hacking arms with swords and whatnot, and there's 0 blood. It's just like, okay, what?
And it's like, and that's what I was going to say is like, if you were literally basing your R rating purely off of violence because Star Wars has its own vernacular and doesn't necessarily use, until Andor doesn't use like common, like profanities that we would use now, like in English, then you would really have to push the violence to like an extreme level to get to an R purely based off.
Like Boba Fett just lines people up and it's like,
yeah, you're
and the heads are popping like grapes. Like they don't incinerate. They're like, it's literally goo and shit. The pink mist comes out. Yeah. Brain matter sticks on the back of Owen's hovel.
you're really like pushing the envelope to get to an R just based off of that. But I can see Darth LVJ's perspective here. It's like if there's a Boba Fett movie, I want to be able to take my little kids to go see it
Darth,
because it's a
just
family
be like me
affair.
and take them anyways and hope that you're not doing too much trauma.
And it's so funny. From somebody with the name with Darth in their name, I thought he would have been like, "Fuck yeah, violence, rated R, let's do it." But he's like, "No, man, I want to be family,
Darth,
family
peaceful
friendly."
Darth.
Yeah, yes. Christopher Weber 33 says, "I would love a grittier take on Boba Fett in his prime bounty hunting time period, perhaps pre TESB. In the Book of Boba Fett, we witnessed a kinder man." On a kind of voyage of self-discovery. However, there is
smart thought here.
Yeah, I mean, however, there is an incomplete bridge between that character and the one we saw developing throughout the Clone Wars. Cheers, Matt and Nick. Well, cheers
All
back
right,
to
Chris.
you,
What's up, brother?
Thank you for your response. And yeah, I think that this is kind of where like people are going with it. Is like bridge, like have a movie, like a rated R movie, be the bridge between, you know, the Boba that we knew and the Boba that we now know post Book of Boba Fett. So like he's saying, set it sometime between Empire Strikes Back and, you know, in
well,
where
yeah, I mean, dude, it would
Book
pay
of
off on his line, like, you know, the Judlin Waste or the desert, something about the wretched or the wicked, right? Like let's see Boba actually be wretched and wicked, because unless you read about it in now non-canon comics, or I guess War of the Bounty Hunters is, but even there, you could argue he's just doing his job. I don't know.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, like, but it seems like everybody who is in favor of it kind of has the same idea. Like, yeah, do it. It's not like if it would have been done. It's like do it and set it before Book of Boba Fett.
You know what? That's right. I was expecting a lot more negativity in regards to Boba. Like, fuck that pussy shit. It should have been R-rated. But it's a fairly well-rounded argument from most of the people that commented. It's not, oh, that was absolute trash. Yes, he needs to be R-rated. It is kind of well thought out, and I think that, digging it.
And again, like, this is how it always goes with Star Wars fans. This is how it always. Listen to me right now, people who are listening to the show. Specifically, listen to this. This is how all Star Wars goes since the prequel releases. People fucking hate it immediately, and then if you give them 8 months to realize that it's a TV show or it's a movie, then they're like, you know what, that wasn't that bad. You know, I enjoyed that, because people are stupid. And the first time that they see something and it's not exactly what they thought it was going to be, they hate it. And then they realize 4 months later, like, actually, that was kind of fun.
He's not wrong.
All right. Last up in the question of the week, OFP_Marine. He says, I would have preferred an R-rated Boba Fett movie taking place from just after the death of Jango, leading all the way up to the events of Return of the Jedi. Reason: I know Star Wars is geared toward a certain storytelling, but I felt the R rating would allow for more realistic journey of Boba Fett.
It's like, yeah, let's see him be bad, and then we get the redemption. And I am surprised that the fans went in this direction, but clearly that was kind of the tone from most of the responses today. So, hey,
yeah, I mean, people are
color me shocked.
People were a lot more friendly to the Book of Boba Fett than I thought.
And you're right. It has been, almost 2 years now, so they probably are moving into the phase of acceptance. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you know, wasn't what I wrote in my brain, the script I had since I was a kid, but it does kind of turn this guy into a full-fledged character. He's not just a dude in an armor that looks cool anymore. He has motivations, and he actually cares about things now, people, other meatbags, which he never did before outside of his dad.
Gives him reasons for the things that he does, and not
him
just
and Fennec are going to have augmented robot assassin babies in between seasons.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff there, people. I like that. I don't know. So far, the questions I've been making up have been hitting a little bit better than usual, so kudos to you all. It is your segment after all, right?
Yeah, good job. Well done on the responses to the community. But now, after the question of the week, we roll into our top 5 Star Wars fan artist features of the week. If you want to get involved in this segment, make sure to follow us on Instagram. Add tag at Star Wars Time Show on all of your Star Wars art posts. Could be toy pictures, could be real ass paint, as we like to call it. It could be any sort of art medium out there, as long as it's Star Wars related. Add tag at Star Wars Time Show. Use the hashtag Star Wars Time Show on your posts as well, because we like to see those numbers climb on that usage.
That's right.
So, to kick off the top 5 for this week, we're going right to at Morpheus Visions with an awesome shot of like, this is like post ROTJ training time period between Luke, Jedi Master Luke, and his new apprentice, his sister, I would assume Jedi Knight Leia, maybe at this point. You think she's still a Padawan? Is this Jedi Padawan?
Luke kind of makes it sound like she took the training almost all the way up to becoming a Jedi, and then she quit because she knew if she did, it would be bad or something.
Yeah. I mean, also probably at that time is like when she noticed like, oh shit, there's some stuff brewing in my political arena that I need to get back involved in.
Yeah, I forget that they try to explain it in TLJ, but whatever. Hey, listen, dude.
But it's a beautiful shot.
I
mean, what we see.
Go ahead
and break it. What do we see here, Matt?
I believe this is the Mandalorian Hot Toys Luke that's releasing. I am very close to taking mine out of the box. I got the shelves clean. They're back in order. Just got to take the toys out. But that's the Luke we're looking at. Now, Nick, the Leia has to be some form of a bash or a mashup, because I think that's her ROTJ Endor head. You know, she's got the Endor braid where she was wearing her helmet for the speeder bike look. The body, I have no fucking clue. Like, I don't know if Morpheus got a custom body and made custom robes and cloaks. But, dude, I love Leia in her tunic. Like, she looks cooler than fucking Luke. I mean, her hood's down. Luke has his hood up. And Luke's in his Sunday blacks. But Leia, she's got, like, her two-pronged blaster belt on. You can see her sabers on that. She's got white gloves. Her cloak, I would argue, is it's similar to Luke's. You know, it's not your standard Jedi cloak. It's more of a cape with a hood on it. It just looks fucking awesome. I love this, and I really love what Morpheus did with the Leia figure, because it's not a standard figure.
Yeah, no, I mean, it looks fantastic. The use of atmosphere is great. They're like walking through like the destroyed remnants of what could have been like an ancient Jedi temple. So he may have been like taking her through some of the ruins of Jedi history to teach her about the past.
Like, or they're out on a mission. I mean, these are what if moments that I think any fan would be down to see. Not that we're ever going to get them, sadly, but yeah, like a year or two post ROTJ, Luke and Leia, the Skywalker twins, fully embracing their Force potential. Leia decked out like a Jedi. Luke whipping his blacks. I mean, yeah, sign us up. So great work here from at Morpheus Visions on Instagram.
Beautiful stuff. Next up in the top 5 is at 97_parsecs_photography. One of our favorites here on the Star Wars Time Show. One of my favorites. He does
that cleared it up, Nick. She had a vision that led to the death of her son while training to use the Force. She put her saber down, and he dies anyways. So yeah, it's one of those good old Skywalker reactions to a vision that happened there.
Yeah, we know how those
They're good
go.
at those.
Never the way
they're really good at interpreting their visions.
Yeah. So no, this was some good stuff there. All right. So 97 Parsecs Photography's picture here is of the Grand Inquisitor, the good old Grand Inquisitor from Obi-Wan Kenobi, as he is rendered in Obi-Wan Kenobi. So we're not seeing him the same way that we saw him in Rebels. And it's the Grand Inquisitor making his way, it seems like, out of a base. I guess it's like they found like maybe like a hidden rebel base. Yeah, like they found like a rebel base or something like that they have taken out. He's walking away from the explosion in a very cool way, surrounded by stormtroopers on all sides, and an Imperial interrogation droid above him. It seems like there's either a dead guy that's just
there's
hanging
a pair of legs
above
just
the top entrance. Yeah. And I can't tell. It almost looks like Reva is there in the background, like Reva and like an Imperial security droid.
I think that's an Imperial officer, but yeah.
Is it an officer? Okay, yeah. It looked like they had a cape on and a dark vest, so I was like, is it Reva? Is it somebody else?
They got that goofy little Imperial Navy hat, I think is what that is.
Oh, yes, the hat. Yeah, so... but yeah, no, I love the composition of the shot. The explosion was captured perfectly, and all of the background stuff happening.
Yeah,
it
looks
top
great.
tier type.
Big surprise. 97 is one of the best out there, no doubt about it.
100.
Great at staging scenes, like with lots of shit in it that looks good and not like just a bunch of lots of shit.
Yeah, so excellent stuff here from @97_parsecs_photography. Make sure to give them a follow. Next up, we have @CarlP_photography. Again, they were in our question of the week responses as well. And he gives us an awesome Lego look at all of our, all of our favorite bucket heads from the Mandalorian TV series. You see right up front and center with his son.
Din Grogu.
You have
Din Grogu
Din
leading
Djarin
off.
and Din Grogu. Yes, right front and center. Off to the right, you have the armor. Off to the further right, you have Paz Vizsla, R.I.P. And then off to the left, you see Bo-Katan Kryze, and then you see, I mean, I'm assuming that's Casca Reeves
I think
next to Bo.
I think so.
It's hard to tell the difference between Casca and Axe Woves at some points, especially with Lego minifigs. So.
I don't know if these are official figs. Like, obviously Grogu and Din are, and I think Bo, because I think her gauntlet has released. But I'm wondering if the armor and Paz and Casca show up in a set, because if they do, I might have to grab them based on this image. They just look at that little Paz minifig, man. I mean, that just looks boss.
No, it looks so badass with this big.
I love it.
Good stuff. I mean, Carl P. Photography really killed it. I love the diode that he set up.
Yeah,
to put him in,
I mean, that looks like that's probably just some random thing he found in a wood shop or something, right? I mean, it looks like it's scrapped wood, but it does kind of form like an outdoor docking bay hallway, which is, I always love. This is my favorite thing about this hobby is what the artist can cook up to kind of flesh out a scene that isn't like a digital background or whatnot. I like the digital backgrounds too, but you know, a lot of times, Nick, you'll look at it and be like, hey, that looks like a cave, and it's just a wadded up pieces of paper, or, you know, hey, that looks like a hovel, and it's just it's styrofoam packing material for a TV. So great stuff. Love it. Carl P_photography.
Good
oh boy,
stuff.
Here he is.
Next
the
up,
Dark Lord.
It's such a good shot. This is from @visual_approach_photo. Visual Approach is another one of our favorites here on Star Wars Time Show. Sean Kearney really fucking killing it. And this one is of, like you said, the Dark Lord himself, the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vader, standing on the shale and volcanic ground of Mustafar with his castle in the background, lightsaber out, ignited, and even you can see the burn.
I'm glad
edges
you
of his
spotted.
cape
That's my
there.
favorite part of this shot. Again, it's the little fucking minutia, the details like that. And what Nick's talking about, if you're just on the podcast version, you know, Vader's obviously standing by a lake of fire, so it's toasty, and his cape is being kicked up in probably the fumes, the steam coming up, and that part of the cape that's being kicked up is all frayed and burnt looking, and it's just that's the shit right there. That's what takes you next level, is adding just those teeny tiny little details to a shot like this. So
yeah, I mean, it's that. It's the excellent use of,
and it's Vader.
like,
I mean, dude, Vader is fucking Vader. He owns in anything he is. Like, look at that guy. He is the greatest movie character of all time. Villain, good guy, don't fucking matter. Just look at him. Look at him.
So cool. Excellent use of lighting and digirama. Excellent use of foreground materials to make the lake of lava. Like you said, it's just all around just such an incredible shot. This is something that I would hang on my wall
I was gonna say,
if it
it's
was
poster.
available.
It's a poster shot. Sean, hit us up.
Beautiful stuff. And, yeah. And last but not least, to close out the top 5 for this week is another shot of our good old Dark Lord of the Sith. This is from a galaxy far, far, far away. 3 fars in there.
Much further than Luke's galaxy then.
Indeed. And what we see here is actually a very interesting shot. So what we see, this has to be very early on in Vader's journey.
Oh, you know what this is?
But what we see,
you know what this is?
This is the end of Clone Wars Season 7. So like I said, very early on in Vader's journey, he is on the snowy planet that the 332nd and Ahsoka and Rex crashed on as they were leaving the siege of Mandalore. And this is where Vader shows up, finds the graves of those fallen 332nd members, but then also he does find Ahsoka's discarded blue lightsaber. Is that correct?
Yeah, she leaves it there, and it probably is a few years after, because like proper stormtroopers were there. But it's a great moment. It's one of the best shots in animated Star Wars. Are those last few moments where the Empire's on this planet that we know, that the clones all died and Rex and Ahsoka survived. And they're clearly investigating all that shit, and he looks down and sees the kind of the war. Actually, the last shot is him walking away, and it's reflected in a clone visor. But he picks up the saber, and you see Morai kind of circling up, and he looks up and ignites it, and he knows that Ahsoka's still out there.
Yeah, I mean it's a beautifully poignant moment in the show, and I think that A Galaxy Far, Far, Far Away captured it incredibly well in this shot. I don't know what he used for the snow, but excellent use of materials and background elements to really kind of place Vader in that scene. And then even though Vader is meant to be like this emotionless, more machine than man figure, like you can feel the emotion. That's
what I was about to say.
In this shot as he looks at that saber.
That shot, I mean, this shot here, and then obviously the inspiration from the Clone Wars. It's probably the greatest scene of Vader in realizing the pain that he's going through without him specifically telling us that he is hurting big time. Because, I mean, he's literally there looking at the death and destruction, being a tough guy, but deep down when he's looking down and he sees that and he's picking it up and the owl's up there, behind that mask he's fucking gutted. And he's thinking about all the bad choices and what the fucking disaster he's got himself in, and what could have been, and what he and Ahsoka could have been. It's one of the best Vader moments in all of Star Wars. It ranks up there when he finally realizes that he's a dick face and his boss is murdering his son in front of him, and you can see it without seeing a facial expression. You can see the flip switch, and he's like, "Fuck." It's up there with that one for me.
Definitely. I mean, it's two figures in his life that for lack of a better term, like he was kind of a father figure.
At least big
he
brother.
Was a father,
no doubt about it. So, but there's very few moments where you can feel Vader's pain through all the armor, and this is one of them. Yeah. The other one I'd say is when he's on the bridge on Endor with Luke, and he says to Luke, like, Obi-Wan once thought as you did, but like, listen, son, I'm toast.
Yeah, it's too, like a certain point he says, it's too late.
Yeah, he just
literally.
Yeah, so the guy's been sitting there thinking about it, feeling sorry for himself. So that's what I mean. There's very few moments where you see Vader's regret, and by see, I do mean it. You as Nick said earlier, you can see and feel it even through all that thick breathing apparatus and black armor. Great shit.
Yeah, beautiful stuff.
All right.
Great one to close it out on. A Galaxy Far, Far, Far Away. Make sure to follow them on Instagram. That is the end of the top 5, and that is the end of our show for this week.
Hey, look at that.
Matt, close us out.
Right. I mean, you're all probably sitting around like, these guys are late. What are they even going to talk about? They told us there's going to be Ahsoka stuff over the weekend. That never happened, but look, we still did it. Still went over 2 hours. Had a good time talking random tangents and all sorts of Star Wars nonsense. And of course, we kept it in the Lucasfilm family with a little Dial of Destiny discussion to kick things off. So if you missed that, make sure to watch the replay. But this is it. It's time to say goodbye to episode 268. So let's go ahead and dance our happy little asses and finger taps on over to StarWarsTime.net. That's our home base on the internet. That's where you can get all the links that you need to have in your life. Do you want the show on a podcast? Well, we want you to want it. So go to StarWarsTime.net, hit subscribe to the podcast, pick a platform of your choice, and then as soon as you do that, give us 5 more seconds and please rate and review the show. If you're listening now on a podcast platform and you have not done so, please, I know it's hard to pause our intense and deep thoughts, but pause it, rate and review, come back and finish the episode. You YouTubers out there, we love you. We get to play live every week, typically on Tuesdays, 5 p. at Star Wars Time Show on YouTube, but we need your help too. All right, if you haven't subbed, go ahead and sub up. We lost a few after last week, so we got to rebuild the numbers. If you're watching right now, go ahead and hit like, leave a comment, add, turn on notifications. Do a dance on one leg while spinning around and patting your belly. That is all we ask of you. No money, no handouts. Just your love and your influence of the artificial intelligence that dictates what meatbags are allowed to see on the internet. If you rate us high, the machines will love us. More people will find us. And we want that to happen, right? Because there's always time for Star Wars time. So why not share that mantra with other like-minded, geeky individuals? All right, people, it's been real as always. We'll be back to our regular time slot next week, at least for the next few weeks before I leave again in August. And you never know, maybe we'll stealth drop or surprise you with Scoundrels of the New Republic, Chapter 2, The Mission. In between now and then, you know the message, you know what to say. If you listen to the Star Wars Time Show, the Force will be with you always.